Thank you very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 15th, 2019 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. Hold on. Yeah, you know how to play this, right? Is it both?
Yes.
All right, let me try that one again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the October 15th, 2019 meeting of the Milton Conservation Commission. The commission members are appointed by the Board of Select
Board.
Sorry. They're no longer the select persons or selectmen, they are now the select board. So we're appointed by them. We've got a couple of issues of formality. One is we have a tape recorder that records anybody and everybody. It's also on the cable vision for Milton. So we'd ask you to come forward if you'd like to ask a question, make a comment, but just use the microphone and identify yourself. And the second formality that we engage in is our introductions.
Judith Darrell Kemp.
My name's John Kiernan.
Hi, I'm Wendy Garpo.
Alpha Doyle.
Gerard Burke, and Steve Ivas, Conservation Agent.
First on the agenda tonight is an informational item, and that's Milton Academy. For 25 years now.
Yeah, well, it's 1993. So
That was your first year. That was my
that was
first
the
year.
first year, yeah.
All right.
And it was,
It's like a reunion.
yeah, that was Andrea was the
Andrea
chair.
Stanton was the
Yeah,
chair. That's
yeah.
right.
EPA. My name's Brandon Fagan. I work for you got me thinking GZA.
Right.
I work for GEI. We represent Milton Academy with respect to a remediation activity that was conducted in 1993 to 1997 to manage El-Napple, which is oil product in the ground at the academy. We generated an installation of a remediation system that included a barrier wall with gate systems and conducted remediation since the 93 period to date. I'm here today just as an informational session to review the conditions of the site and just update you on the activities since last year. In September of 2018, we conducted a
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah,
Can you
go
just
ahead.
go back for the public's benefit and just say what happened back in
okay.
the last century?
All right. So back in 1993, there was an identified oil spill that occurred on the site in the rear of the building at Robbins House, which is in the north side of the Academy property between O'Hare Pond and their kitchen and main building areas. The remedy was to remove a bulk of material down in the wetlands by excavating material and installing a barrier gate system, as well as recovering El-Napple. There had been El-Napple recovery since the 70s conducted by other consultants. The remediation was unsuccessful in controlling the migration into the pond. The barrier gate system that was installed is a vertical high-density polyethylene barrier system. It includes gate control valves that allow the groundwater, which has not been impacted on the property, to pass through the gate without creating any mounding behind the gate, and then hence collecting any napple that would migrate towards the wetland and protect it. And since then, in this 20 years of history since we've started monitoring post-remedy, we've been able to eliminate the majority of any napple represented by mobility around the property, and we might put that down to an area that's about around 80 by 30 in terms of dimension from its original area that was over about 1.5 acres to 2 acres. Right now, the program has been to monitor the property and then run belt skimmer systems. We had about 15 years ago, for about 10 years, we had an active remedy system pumping groundwater and product out of the ground, at which point that became technically, impractical because we were getting predominantly water and very little napple. So we went to operating source control in 2 locations, which is RW1 and RW2. Those 2 source areas were collected for the last, say, 15 years. Those areas, in addition to a number of other wells, have had what's called natural source zone depletion. The active bioactivity into the property has been generating the amount of product that's been free and available to migrate into wells. So essentially where we are right now today was in 2018, in September, we brought in, we executed a technical feasibility assessment on the property to demonstrate whether it's technically feasible to continue to product recovery on the monitoring wells that do remain, and there's only 4 of them. And they're all in one very concentrated area around the former release source area. We
4 wells?
4 monitoring wells. They're within that 30 by 80 kind of area roughly. Dimensionally, it's more of a skewed volume. Those locations are now been characterized by a Hawk system. We brought in a system that allows us to demonstrate the transmissivity of the product relative to what's in the ground. The transmissivity by demonstration under the MCP has to be at or less than 0.8 feet squared per day. The transmissivity that was evaluated in the 3 wells for the NAPL that was there was less than 0.8 feet squared per day. So that demonstrated that we didn't have a recoverable condition for the remaining LNAPL that's in the property. So the ultimate goal was to employed to collect and manage any of the product that was on the property to technical feasibility. The presence of the barrier wall in its effect is a permanent solution. However, it's an active remedy, and as long as the barrier is retained, we still have to manage that portion of the site as, you know, from a perspective of a permanent to temporary solution. We don't have a permanent solution as long as the barrier remains active to control secondary sheen migration into the pond. We haven't seen any sheen in the pond from any of the release, you know, that occurred in the last 5 to 6 years. So we're in a pretty good place. The boom is sustained in the pond right now. We are going to evaluate its performance and need for its presence in the next year or so to go along with the technical feasibility demonstration. But we continue to monitor the property on a quarterly basis, including those 4 monitoring wells, and then the full monitoring well twice a year. So we do have an active presence on the property. That won't be changing. This meeting won't be changing. The maintenance activity that we're doing on the pond will not change. We've been maintaining the areas bordering the pond on the south side. That will happen in the spring. We do the cleanup in the spring to remove any of the invasive species that are there and give us access to the property in order to manage the booms and other activity that we have conducted along that one boundary. The remainder of the property is still in maintenance. We clean out the catch basin, RCB1, RCB2, and RCB3. Those are typically conducted in the spring. They're more of a maintenance control issue. They protect against any of the sand migration from washout from the cars in the wintertime for sand use down in that area. The catch basins are built like MDC type traps. We clean them out so that we don't get any of the sediment migration into the control areas like O'Hare Pond's outfall. So we don't really see a lot of buildup in any of those catch basin outfall locations, you know, for that reason. And that's where we're continuing to maintain the property. Any questions at this point, or?
I've done this so many times with you, I actually don't have any questions.
Okay.
But I bet some of the newer folks might.
How old is the barrier?
The barrier was put in 1997. It's 20 years old.
And what's the life expectancy?
The
of
life
barrier?
expectancy was 30 to 50 years. So
So what happens when it fails?
well, it would have to fail. The monitoring wells that we're monitoring actually are control points all along the gate system. So the gate systems actually, there's 5 points of gate control, and those downgradient gates act as a control points for monitoring. In addition, we have monitoring wells on all the downgradient control points to monitor if
What
there's a
happens
failure.
if the barrier fails?
So if the barrier were to fail, we could go back to an active remedy. The active systems would then be used to draw the water table down.
It is going to fail.
Not in your and my lifetimes, probably.
Well,
Well, so let me
Well,
look at it another way. The barrier is not necessary right now because what I was just demonstrating to you is we don't have NAPL mobility. So the technical infeasibility is demonstrated by the fact that we ran the Hawk system on the 4 remaining wells that are out there. So we don't have mobility to the product, so we won't see migration into the wetlands.
Okay, but there is product still in the ground.
There is product present
No.
in a residual capacity,
Okay, and
correct?
have there been any advances in the business of extracting oil that have taken place since this began that have
No.
not been taken?
No.
So there's no modern approach or more technically newer or whatever that can go in there and extract that oil now?
No. What we currently have, you could apply things like a surfactant, like a biosurfactant, but you increase the probability that you will increase partitioning into the groundwater. So the contaminant concentration, right now, we don't have a groundwater problem. We haven't had one since 1993. So groundwater concentrations haven't exceeded the GW1 standard, and we don't want them to exceed the GW1 standards, because then we have a groundwater problem that translates into a surface water problem into the pond. So we don't employ, active remedies like terpenes and some of the oxidant surfactants, because if we do get partitioning, those gates were not designed to function as a water treatment point. You theoretically could apply air sparging systems, you could apply chemical oxidation at those points if you had to put into a control scenario for groundwater. We don't have a groundwater problem, we don't want to exacerbate that issue.
What about linseed oil? There's,
Linseed oil is a terpene. That's
Right.
basically what I was saying. It's any delemonine, any pine seed oils, terpene. All those oils are breakers. Those are emulsifiers.
right, they're used in other places.
Right, they are. And again, we've applied those in cases where we're looking for mass recovery and we're trying to physically. Like Exxon Valdez was one of the places we learned that it's a mistake to apply some of those. Because of the Amoco products and some of the Exxon products that were applied in those events, actually created an emulsification of that product. And when the tide went out, instead of having the product sitting on the surface, it actually translated into the tidal zone. And what happened was they had to go back in and use alternate terpenes that were non-emulsifying. They're non-polar organics. And they basically act like they emulsify, but what they do is they create a coating property and they float the material out. Again, we're not dealing with gasoline and light fuels here. We're dealing with heavy 6 oils that are in the nature of probably 40 to 50 years old. So the residual fractions that you're looking at they're more like a tar than they are like physically, a mobile product. So that when I talk about what's residual, that's what you're looking at. It will come up like a glue.
And there were no PCPs and.
No. There was no transformer base or dielectric fluids used.
I don't know. I just, it's still going on.
It will go on for a lifetime, basically, until the natural source zone depletion is, when you look at it, again, this is one of the last 3 to 5 years, you see a lot more demonstration of natural source zone depletion programs. But we only, back in the 70s, 80s, and even into the 90s, we had monitored natural attenuation. Now they're demonstrating now that the products are actually breaking down microbially on their own. There is some level of emulsification by natural microbes, but they're not significant. Those oils are going to be left in the ground. DEP is, recognized that, under a temporary solution, it's, you'd be looking at tearing up Milton Academy from about 5 to 7 acres and bringing it down 40 or 50 feet in order to remedy to get a source remedy to that property. And you would actually take Milton Academy out of, operation in order to functionally do that. It wouldn't be feasible. Now, we have applied permanent remedies to stabilization up in the kitchen area, which has been a heavy contributor to the value on the property, because up by the kitchen, which is where the tanks were, the product that was in the ground was a very heavy product, and that had some mobility to it in that source area. And in '06, when we went in to build the kitchen, we actually brought a rig in. It's essentially, if you're familiar with jetting rigs, we actually jetted out the product in a super top, and we were able to remove a specific horizon of the product out of the ground and convert it to cement. So that area that we did, was basically a 33 by 17 source area, but was up against the building. And that had a big component of the finger of the source plume treated.
I'm sorry, did you say 8 acres, 50 feet down?
Yes.
And how long was this leak going on for that it would cause
To give you a
so much-
sense of when we got involved in the 70s, when they did some of the tests, they had two 20,000-gallon fuel tanks out there. And the fuel tanks, when they went to test them, they filled them with water one day. They came back the next day, and the tanks should have been full to tank test them for fit testing. They were empty.
So, back when this first started, let's give that a number of 50, okay?
Okay.
Or
Well,
100.
You can, there are estimates as to the actual amount, right?
Oh,
And how
oh, no,
much is
no,
gonna
I
be
don't,
covered?
I don't need the actual amount. I mean, it's a
Right.
lot. So if you were to say, let's give it a, first event, 100. Damage, oil all over the place. Where are we now?
So right now, we're at about 85, 90% of the remedy in terms of its completion. We're at about 10% remaining. And that 10% for activity, for active
Oh, that's the
remedy.
other, okay, all right.
In other words, we don't have any product breaking out into the wetlands, no more oil in the tennis balls. We have no more plant-based impacts. We don't have wetland stress in terms of stage 1 ecological screening. We don't have higher order mammals getting oil on them. We don't have product in the benthics. So we basically, where we put the barrier in, there's a benthic organism factor. We don't have a benthic problem. The bottom of the pond still retains sand. We don't have an oil layer in there. What we did was we controlled the breakout at the barrier edge, which was along the edge of the pond. We didn't have the ability to basically go into the pond unless we destroyed portions of the pond, and that wasn't the intent.
So you've taken away 85% of the original
85% of the
spill.
original free available source, correct.
I have to ask.
Again, I'm giving you a ballpark scenario. I mean, what we have is a residual concentration, and the only way to really quantify it would be to do what they call an imbibition testing. I used to work in the oil fields in the oil business, so what you're really trying to do is understand what your residual saturation is in your soil. And the only way to do that is basically to go in and take a physical sample of the soil, take it into the laboratory, and then evaluate that by an RP40 method. And that gives you the amount of product that's available on a residual level versus what can be recoverable.
What did you mean when you said no oil on the tennis balls? I mean,
So
this happened near the tennis courts, I mean, people were playing?
There was product breaking out into the pond. There was actually a physical oil layer in O'Hare Pond.
How long ago did that occur? Or
No,
how
that's-
long ago did that end?
About 15 years ago. We haven't seen it, maybe even more than that. We-
How are the snapping turtles doing in the pond?
We don't evaluate the higher order or the presence of the mammals in the pond currently.
You haven't heard, well, that wouldn't be a mammal, it would be a.
But the physical conditions of the pond are such that they support, all different forms of wildlife. So we don't see any secondary impact to them at all. We're not looking at subsurface features. If they were working in the benthic zone, even in the shallows, we don't have free product residuals remaining.
Other than your company, does DEP come out periodically?
DEP's we submitted everything back in the 70s, 80s, and, and 90s. That's how we got involved in the 90s, was because of the conditions with the DEP. They had been reporting, actually, the EPA, that there had been discharges, and they had put it in as an anomaly. But in fact, the TPH discharges were showing, free product, and they had actually been pumping product into the wetlands.
So EPA or the DEP, both the feds and the state, have not come out and done their own
No,
separate?
because the MCP, and I'm not familiar with the Massachusetts program. The LSP program is a quasi-liable scenario where the LSP of record has to manage the property over long-term and report to DEP. So we have submissions to DEP on an annual basis. In this case, we have a biannual application. So we've submitted reports, which is the reports you have in hand. Those go in twice annually, and with any changes and modifications, they're explained in there. DEP would like most properties, they would hope to get people away from the temporary solutions if it's technically feasible. They recognize some of these sites with these source areas that are not manageable within the conditions of the property. They've defined what's necessary in terms of information to demonstrate that they're technically infeasible and technically impractical from an application standpoint. And we've done, we've made a significant effort to achieve that goal. But at the same time, recover as much product as we physically can. The Academy has been very aggressive in terms of its application of remedies. This hasn't been, a Band-Aid remedy. We're talking about spending millions of dollars in terms of the application to put in what's out there.
Good questions, good answers.
Already?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
I'm curious about the irrigation of the athletic fields in that area. I understand that it's well water that's used?
So there is a well over, it's an 80-foot well, it's tied into the Neponset River Basin. It's about 120 feet over, it's next to Brook Road.
Okay,
It's just an irrigation well that they use. That used to have an overflow to it that went into the pond. We no longer use that. That was stopped probably 10 years ago. They put a variable frequency drive submersible pump system in that, so there's no longer any overflow or direct feed.
so is there any chance of contamination of the water that's being used for irrigation? in this
Only if the
problem?
groundwater contaminated. Oh, you're talking about the zone, no, the well over on Brook Road is, if you laid this out, this is Brook Road, the impact remedies are up here. The capture zone for that well is not even, is 500 feet from any source area,
Okay,
right?
thank you.
John, how similar is this situation to the recent ones that we observed with, and please forgive me, the new building that's going, Henry's?
Henry's, 131 Elliott.
Yeah. They found a tank, it was leaking, and what did the state require them to do?
Well, it's still in process.
Okay.
And just as DEP is definitely involved, you asked a question about do they go out there and look at it?
Yeah.
And I think your answer, I know you said essentially through an LSP, but
Right.
DEP is monitoring this, and they have been since I first heard Brandon in 1993. So all of this information is going to DEP, and the evaluation is done there as well as here. This is more a reporting situation to us, because DEP has an RAO of...
We have a post RAO, Class C post RAO, C1.
But what did they require of that project at the Henry's, the former Henry's building?
I think that's on the agenda tonight,
Didn't they require
isn't
total
it?
removal of?
Well, there's a feasibility component to that, just as Brandon indicated, that you can't dig down 100 feet and remove all the soil. So somebody has to do a balancing testing. When do you get it to a safe level, and then can you live with a partial remedy? And the answer to that question is, well, it depends. I mean, are you planting corn there that you're selling to people? Is it a residence? Is it a commercial institution? So there are all kinds of factors that go into that analysis as to what DEP will eventually approve as a temporary solution. I mean, a permanent solution.
Permanent solution. So we're at a temporary solution, so the phase 1 and 2 are the pre-characterization phase, so that's where all these monitoring wells and the investigation happens. The phase 3 is your feasibility assessment, is to evaluate, to your question, what's technically practical and feasible. Every 5 years, we have to render an LSP opinion to the property, whether it's feasible to apply any new or different technology that's more feasible. So we go through a technical feasibility review every 5 years, and we have a submission under those 5-year windows. Phase 4 is design, and phase 5 is implementation of the remedy, and post-RAO, which is phase 5 plus, basically, is for the monitoring. That's what phase we're in right now. We've been just monitoring the property, but we've been applying the remedies and active recovery for the last 22 years, so.
Do you know, are there any other situations similar to this that have been going on temporarily for 22 years?
Oh, more than that. There's quite a few. Yeah, in the state, all the refineries, all the, this, Hamburello.
Superfund sites?
Yeah, I mean, not at the level, I mean, I'm talking more practically for El Napol, there's quite a few. It's just, there is just feasibilities. The state themselves have their own with, respect to properties that are in the right-of-ways that were former releases. What you're really trying to focus on is, and we're in a higher risk category, so we're very sensitive to the students at the school, vapor recovery, vapors into the building in terms of recoverability, and managing all the elements of the risk that associated with that property. I mean, back when, we had product in the pond, we had people, with their dogs coming home with product all over them, and that was an issue. So that was, that, on a simple level, but, it also dictates how you have to handle the property with respect to students and access, so there's fences and we do the maintenance. Part of why we're here is just to get through and get some feedback from the public in terms of that review, to understand where, if any, people are experiencing risk and there are any issues with the pond. The good news is that we just don't have it anymore. We just haven't had any product. There's no physical access to the free product, and we've seen it diminish significantly since we've been active in the last 20 years. So, but you're going to get to a point where it's kind of like a sponge. You poured oil into it, you squeeze it out as much as you want, but it's still got a residual level in it. We just can't get it out. To your point, it would require excavation in order to do that. And if you kind of run the geometry, it's pretty significant what we'd have to do that. So.
All right, are there any questions from abutters or members of the public? Concerns, suggestions, questions? Hearing none. Any other questions from commissioners? Once again, at 25 years, thank you very much for your
Thanks,
report.
Sam. See
We
you next
appreciate
year.
it.
Take care.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is number 2, request for determination of applicability. This is the Milton Housing Authority at 753 Blue Hill Avenue. Hi, good evening and welcome.
Good evening. Dave Crispin with the BSC Group and Chris Thomas with the BSC Group. First of all, I offer you a little bit of an apology. Steve and I met at this site in July, I believe, and we had a conversation about, gee, we're about 115 feet from the wetlands. Do we really need to file an RDA? And Steve suggested that we draft a memo to you folks, and you were on vacation, and Kathleen was on vacation, and somehow I never got the message that you guys were meeting, so I was not here. My bad. I believe you requested that they file an RDA, so we have filed official RDA on this. The wetlands across the top back of this site. See if I can do this without hitting anybody.
First of all, for the public, can you explain what we're looking at?
This,
What street is-
this is Blue Hill Avenue back here. We're at the very low spot, and this is the actual building that's there now. It's a special needs housing facility.
Well, yeah, Milton for the Milton Housing Authority, 6-bedroom for special needs. And the septic system, the existing one has failed its Title V inspection, and the project is to replace that system in the same layout.
How old is the existing system?
1995.
And we permitted the property when it went in, and that's, help me out with your experience, that's like, it should last longer than that.
Not necessarily. 1995 is 25 years. This is a fairly heavy water user. They have several on-site laundry machines.
Okay.
That and Title V changed shortly after this, which effectively made the system half as big as it needed to be. So we did reflag the wetlands across the top here, and fascinating, I think part of this was that flag, and that flag were actually recovered in the same location, and topographically, the slope goes down quite steep, and it flattens right here. So we basically held the same flag points as were there in 1995. And Steve, the driveway that you and I walked up, there was also 2 flags here that are different colors. So there were blue ones and different colors. So Matt went out and looked at that, and we located them, and we know where they are.
Matt Long?
Matt Crichton,
Thank you.
Matt Crichton, who I believe you have met through the years. This is the 100-foot buffer zone, and if you can slide that up a little, Steve.
This way?
Yep. Septic tank is right here, it's gonna remain, and we are looking at putting in a Presby system, which if you're not familiar with Presby systems, it's a 12-inch diameter perforated pipe wrapped in filter fabric packed in concrete sand. It's a fairly innovative, and this is about half the size of what a conventional Title V system would be. The secret to this system is it keeps the leach field aerobic. So the air is sucked in through a vent at one corner, comes back through the septic tank and up through the vent, and there's a constant draft of air through the system, which should make this last much longer than the 20-some-odd years that they got out of this field.
Do I remember that in addition to the 3,000 gallon tank that you mentioned, it's going to be a 1,500?
There's an existing 3,000 right here. We're going to add 1,500 to make the total current code numbers meet. So this is a fully compliant septic system proposed. We're actual point of actual construction, we're probably 130 feet from the wetlands.
Yeah, we're about 35 feet from the buffer to the BVW.
One of the concerns I have, first of all, I salute the Housing Authority for improving the septic system. That's a good thing, so we support that, whether it's jurisdictional or not. Steve, can you move that down a bit?
Sure.
We've had, within the last few years, we've had some issues here, crossing, there's a culvert in this road.
There's a culvert.
We had a number of the neighbors in here complaining that this whole area floods. We had one of the neighbors from Bradley Road come in. This is all within the last 2 years, perhaps, and then going back. I mean, Dr. Rex's home is up here. This is a very, very wet area. I would like to see the flags, but don't be concerned, because whether it creates a positive or a negative, I think a negative with conditions is probably appropriate because it's a good thing that you're doing. But I am concerned with those flags because the person who was last here within the last, I'm guessing 18 months, lived here in the Bradley Road section. And he had all kinds of concerns with water backing up. One of the issues for this, the latest permit that we issued was that there's a culvert that crosses Blue Hill Avenue. Let me see. Can you slide back, Steve?
Yep. Sure.
Do we have Blue, so I can see Blue Hill Avenue? If you head this way, which would be north, there's a culvert about, I don't know, it's less than a quarter of a mile that crosses underneath Blue Hill Avenue. And there was a lot of concern if that backed up, it was going to create chaos in the back of the Milton Housing Authority building. And I would like to see the flags. Not that we have any expectation of changing them, and not that it would make a difference to your permit, and we can do this quickly so as not to slow you down. But that, it's a real issue as to where those flags are. Not just for this project, but for the most recent one that was permitted, and the concerns that were expressed by at least one neighbor, and I think he had some support from others. When I say Bradley Road, it's where the old Victory Garden was. There's a small dead-end culvert street there. It's called Bradley Place or something like that. There are, I don't know, 4 or 5 houses in there. And they expressed some concerns with water backing up towards them. So this may be form over substance, but I would like to take a look at it. And I can do it myself, and or if the commission thinks that they'd like to see it. It's a very, very wet area. Oh, you can see it.
Yeah,
You can see it here.
This is the one that you provided to us.
Yep,
Yes,
yep, that's the GIS map, correct.
Yeah, it goes all the way over to there too.
Right, and that's what I refer to as Bradley Road. It's actually a little culvert, cul-de-sac rather, off of Bradley Road. So I don't know what the commission feels about it. I mean, maybe I can just do some site survey myself, but I'm just concerned with the location of the flags. But I don't think it's going to impact on your, the result of your RDA.
I can tell you those flags are basically where it's flat and it's at the toe of that slope, because we're probably 15 or 20 feet higher up at this point than the wetland in the back. It drops back quite a bit.
Oh, I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And one other comment, from a stormwater perspective, no change in impervious surface here. No real change in grading, so hydrologically, nothing's changing here.
All right. Steve, have you seen the flag locations?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and I don't think you were here with us
I know I was
when we
not.
did that permitting. One of the reasons I remember it is that they repaved the road, and they had to get all the neighbors together because they were going to share the costs.
You're talking about the driveway access road?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yep.
And that's where the culvert is, and they had to
Right.
reconstitute the culvert so that that water would flow
Yep.
north.
When Dave and I were out there together, we saw where that culvert was, and we saw upgrading to that culvert is actually a beautiful wet meadow.
Right.
It's absolutely magnificent.
Large one.
Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody wants to take a look at it, just walk down.
All right, well, if everybody else is comfortable, I mean, other than the placement of the flag, which is not going to affect your project, that was my only concern, but it would,
Well, I think because the wetland, 100 foot is so clearly outside the work area.
well, is it? Because that's exactly the area that the Bradley Road people were saying flooded. And they were concerned with two things. One is the culvert going under that driveway, if it were not replaced and maintained, it would put more water in that area that we're
In
looking
this
at right
area
here.
here.
Exactly what we're looking at. That's the area that was flooding.
Dave, do you know if there's a FEMA flood zone in that area?
It is, I do not believe it's mapped as FEMA. Didn't we,
We're- Yeah, we're not in we're in a Zone X.
Zone
Our-
X, okay.
Yeah.
So that's another
this is
piece
in
of
the
information.
FEMA zone?
That's the
If there was a
zone right
FEMA
here.
flood zone, I'd be more concerned.
The floodplain is at the very back of the property.
Yeah.
Right.
Subdivision line, that's what's indicated.
You lost me.
Here's the property.
Yeah?
Here's the line, and this is where I thought the neighbors were talking about the flooding back here, not just behind the house.
Oh, the highlighted section in this is the floodplain?
The
The
blue
blue
issue.
is
Blue.
the floodplain.
Yeah.
So that's westerly of the location.
Way up in the
I thought neighbors
ceiling
were
on
talking
one side.
about over
Exactly,
here.
west.
And
Yeah, it's north of
even
the
so,
property
it
line.
would be behind.
It's the driveway
West.
that goes in.
North, south,
There's a driveway that goes in, and that's where the culvert is.
Northwest.
it's
Northwest. Thank you.
I think these are the houses on Bradley Place or whatever it is.
So that's another fact.
All right, I just want to keep track of it, is if there's a consensus to issue a negative determination, that's fine, because the project is good. There's no question about that, it's going to improve the quality of water.
I mean, if you want to take a look at it, John.
I can do it by
Yeah,
myself.
But I'd be inclined to say negative determination based on the material that you presented.
Good question. What's the anticipated lifespan of the new septic system?
They don't have exact numbers on that, but because of the nature of the aerobic condition in the field, I would expect they would get 30 to 50 years out of it. It's a whole new technology that Europe has been using for 50 or 70 years, and now all of a sudden the United States, or at least Massachusetts, thinks it's the cat's meow. So,
Good, thanks.
Are there any abutters or members of the public that have a question or would like to make a comment? Seeing none, I'm just reading the consensus here. Is there a motion to issue a negative determination? And you know our regular, what I call boilerplate conditions, that is, you don't park hydraulic equipment overnight in the buffer zone, but I think you can do the whole thing and stay out of our jurisdiction.
Yep.
But it would include our regular boilerplate conditions.
So moved.
I'd second it.
Any discussion? All in favor? Okay. Negative RDA, you're all set.
Steve, do you want these cards?
Yes.
Please.
For sure, thank you very much. I should have asked you for that. Dave, don't go anywhere, because I would like to ask the indulgence of the public and take something out of order, and you'll have to help me. Which one is it? Because I know you're here
Last
on
one.
the last one.
Number 11.
That's 175 Milton Street. That's a request for certificate of compliance. Could we shift to that? You're on.
Absolutely. This is the Burr condominium. We were here a little over a year ago with a notice of intent to put a sub-drain in front of a building to basically dewater the basement, which has been inundated for a long time. You were gracious enough to give us an order of conditions. The plan was implemented, and Steve and I have walked it, and the embarrassing part is the contractor decided to build it a little bit different than what the plan was. And the best you do to keep on top of these things, sometimes the horse gets a little out of the barn without the bit in his mouth. So Steve and I have been emailing back and forth, we've talked, we've looked at it, and we actually looked at this back in June. And I can zero in on this if I can do this without,
Sure. Here's another one.
no, it works. There is a large condo building right here, and they get water in the basement. So we put in a French drain across the front of the building, and it comes way down here, and there's a little wetland across the back. All along this stretch here, this is the as-built plan. You'll see how straight this pipe is. The original design plan had this pipe coming down and back in here because this is BVW, according to Matt Crichton, our wetlands biologist. And I guess to the untrained eye, you would see a lawn.
That is correct, Mr. Chairman, and members, yes. It's a beautifully 660 nanometer lawn. Nice green.
I guess the hydrology's there, the soils were there, but the plants were, so 2 out of 3 made it a wetland. Steve and Vanessa from our office looked at it the day they set the hay bales out. Everything was hunky-dory, and I came back a week later to see how they were doing, and they had gone into that wetland and straightened the pipe out. So I'm here a little bit with my hat in my hand, but the good news is that it's all restored. It looks exactly like it did before, and it's working. There's no more water in the basements. So that being said, I mean, I guess where we are is we'd love a certificate of compliance so we can close this out and get this beyond us.
When you said it was revegetated, what
Give some
vegetation was put in?
It's same lawn
Just
grass.
lawn, just grass, nothing but,
I did send Steve a couple of pictures.
Yeah, I've got a couple pictures here if you want to see them. Take me a few minutes to get to them, that's all.
Okay, my bad.
That's okay, that's okay.
This is an old monastery, I guess, is the history on the property, so they created a lot of lawn space around it. I can see how the contractor went off the rails a little bit. I don't forgive him, but frankly, after we discovered it, we said, you know, it's probably better to leave it alone than it is to go back and rip it all apart and muck it out.
All right, we utilize and the reason I asked Steve to get a hold of you is because we've been pretty uniform in requiring a professional engineer to attest to the fact that the construction, the project was done in substantial compliance with the order of conditions. And when I read your report and I read slight shift in the location of the lower length of the piping, I said, ooh, that's not in substantial compliance. So that's why I asked Steve to contact you to go out to see that. I understand what you just said, it's done, and we probably don't want to tear it up, but you did go through the wetlands, and that's a violation not only of the WPA, but the town bylaw and our order of conditions. Now, we've got some other issues on the agenda tonight, and I look to you, Judith, because you've talked about finding other people for not following our order of condition. And if we're going to be uniform, I don't think we can just say, oh, okay, because if the contractor was out of line and he or she built something that was not part of the order of conditions, that's a little bit like putting a stick in our eye. And I don't think we should just say, oh, okay. And so I would suggest that we at least consider some kind of a fine, although I don't think it would be a good idea to tear it all up again because we're already in the wetlands. But I'd just like to get some other,
And that's what it looks like today, or actually in August. That was August 8th.
So a section of this is wet, it's the wetland, does it get wet? I mean, is there?
Does it get wet at the surface?
Yes, at the
Yes,
surface, standing water, so on this lawn,
I would say the
small
ground's
amount.
squishy is the best way to
It's
describe it.
completely saturated. That's the best way to explain it.
okay.
And Matt and I both agreed where the wetland line was. In fact, I had done the wetland line on this site 15-plus years ago myself for another project.
and by the way, I think it's the contractor's fault, but
Oh, yeah.
we don't have a grasp on the contractor, only the applicant.
Right.
Now, the applicant, they may have some claim against the contractor, but the contractor clearly violated our conditions. So I think we should have some kind of a
I
response
think
to
so
that.
too. It doesn't make any sense to go in and tear anything up.
The
But I
wetland
think a
is,
fine does make sense.
just FYI, the wetland, I think the wetland is on this side. Is that correct, Dave? Am I looking at the parking lot?
If you're looking uphill there, it's on the right side.
Right-hand side, right up in here. And it works over this way.
There's no pooling of water though, is there?
No, there's no pooling of water on the surface.
What was the contract amount for this job, do you know? Any idea, guesstimate?
I don't recall, I believe it was around $25,000. It was only about a week's worth of work. They were in and out of there very quickly.
Usually we have some basis to come up with, how much of a fine. So I'm trying to think, would we say 10%, $2,500 fine for tearing up the wetlands, something like that? Arthur, what do you think, 2,000 something?
I defer to Steve, based on his experience with this, for an estimate.
Gee,
I don't think that's fair because you go outside our jurisdiction. I don't think it's fair to Steve because he deals with so many other jurisdictions. I think we have to
That's what
look
I wanted to
at,
get.
we had to look at our own, what we've done. We were at 11 Reed Street when they violated our elevation order. That was 1,500? I forget.
It should have been more.
I know you said it.
Remember, based on 10% of the,
I don't have any
Of
difficulty
the
with
contract.
finding within the jurisdiction. I was just trying to get an idea of
Oh, what other
what
towns do?
similar situations
Sure,
would
yeah,
be.
that's fair. Yeah.
But
I would say in that ballpark is appropriate.
10%.
Also where it's a condo development, the expense will be
how many units?
possibly.
21, I believe, don't
Yeah.
quote me on it, I think there's 21.
21, 22.
2,500 is.
I'm just looking for a consensus. I have a somewhat fresh memory of other fines we've imposed in the town. Ford Ranch Road and Hillside Street, right across the street.
Yes, right,
Remember the fellow put the
yes,
the
stones.
stones there, and
was
I
the
think that
formula?
was 1,500. What's that?
What was the formula? 10% of the,
No, that's why I'm bringing this up, because we didn't do it as a percentage of the contract price.
But I think because this property is so many units, so it's millions of dollars of somehow being distributed, it isn't just a single-family house, so that's kind of different too. So who's responsible is all of the condo association in some way, to do this job on the property and do it right.
well, to John's point, I think we have to have a set
I agree with that.
formula to use in these kind of things.
I
Whether
agree.
it's a single family or a multi-unit condominium complex. And if we don't have a formula, then we can go and base it on what we've done in the past.
I'm sorry, we can?
No, I would imagine that we should.
Yeah, we need some,
Yeah.
A, rational basis, and B,
Right.
uniformity.
Yeah, right.
And so that we're treating all situations in the
Okay,
same
now I
fashion.
know your mind is going, so where were you at in this one?
Well, it's probably between $1,000 and $2,500.
I'll split the difference and say put $1,750 on the table.
I think a percentage it makes more sense.
Okay.
And 10% sounds reasonable to me.
But we don't know the exact cost.
True.
We don't, and then sometimes, let's say it was, a $100,000 project, which could be, unfortunately, in this day and age, it could be somebody, rehabbing their bathroom, and it could cost $100,000. Or we had 700 Canton Avenue that spent $90,000 on a fence, which is, we're gonna talk about tonight, and I wouldn't want to do 10% of $90,000. That's why I'm concerned with the
volume.
percentage. I mean, that's probably the best example, because that's why I brought it up. Because I think we're going to be talking about that on this evening's agenda. And that kind of a fine would scare me, that I don't think it would be appropriate to take
Do
a
you have
percentage of that.
do you have a guesstimate as to the cost of the remediation?
If,
How much it added on, restoring the,
it
what the
didn't,
cost
it
was?
didn't add a penny to it, that's the thing, is that
Right.
they were restoring a lawn or they were restoring a
Anyway,
lawn.
yeah, okay.
They were 10 feet off, pretty much.
Yeah, and it's about a length of about 100 feet perhaps, so.
Right.
There might be 1,000 square feet of
Yes.
alteration
I would agree
here.
with that. But it's in the same lawn. The lawn looks the same, although there's a little bit different species grass, of course. It's a wetter species.
I mean, if you're looking for a rational basis, how about, if there's 1,000 square feet of alteration, then $1,000 fine. I'm not hung up on the
Again,
number, I just think we should do something.
I think it's distinguished by the fact there are so many units here.
I'm with Jerry.
As
I don't
opposed
think it matters whether it's an outhouse or a castle.
But I
It's the
think,
work that was done. That's the point that we're talking about here.
see,
Yeah, but
I see it as different. That if you have, 25 units responsible for this versus a single-family house. So I'd say $2,000 as opposed to $2,500.
As long as we have a rational basis and we're uniform, sort of equal protection, then I think we can justify the fine. So you say 2,000, you say 1,750. Wendy, what say you?
I like the 10% myself.
Okay,
So,
2,500?
but- so 2,500,
25,
yeah.
2,000?
Yeah,
1,750?
Come up with a figure.
You what?
We're
looking for a consensus.
Well, let me go back a little bit. What's the largest fine within the past couple of years that,
75,000.
okay, and what's,
But that was 22 years worth of ignoring us and saying, no, we're not going
did
to
that
change
include
it.
that 300-year-old tree?
No, it didn't. No, it didn't. No.
1,500, 20,000, 2,000,
So it sounds like 1,750 is about
We have
about that.
2,500, we have 1,750, we have 2,000. So 2,000 would be in the middle.
in the
so-
middle, yeah.
Do you want to go along with 2,000?
Yes.
Arthur?
250 extra dollars?
I'll go with it on the condition that we set a scale for this based upon our history in the town.
Yeah.
So that we're not at this type of a situation on another project a month from now or a year from now.
I agree.
Just like we do with the
But that's why we
capital
talked, 11 Reed
I
Street
see.
was $3,000, not 374. What's the other side of the brook on Brook Road? We find them 2,000?
See, that's just it, we don't have,
Exact
we
amount.
just need a ledger sheet that does this and that we can use as
That's
a
true.
reference for
Yeah,
the future.
That's true.
that-
But clearly, we're within the range here if we're talking.
Right.
But if you wanted to get the averaging down, if you're doing averaging, I could come in at 1,000, and that would bring it down to 2,000, 2,500, 1,750, 1,750, and 1,000. The average is 1,750.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
Just, we're totally at mercy on this, I know this was not right, but the erosion controls were in place, everybody thought they were okay, the contractor worked inside the erosion controls, didn't read the plan, but I'm just saying there was some cooperative effort that got it here, maybe part of your consideration, and probably 3/4 of the project was
I'm
outside
sorry.
the buffer zone.
Say that again. Because I missed it
When the
you first
erosion
said.
controls were put in, and Steve and the young lady from my office went and did the kickoff meeting, everybody agreed that that was okay, and he worked behind the erosion controls. Unfortunately, the erosion controls were in that wetland.
Steve- So it's Steve's fault.
I'm not throwing stones, and totally, I
Thanks,
just,
Steve.
for consideration. I'll leave that,
All right.
he's on the court.
All right.
I would agree with him. That's a correct depiction of what happened.
And that may be another ground to see if we can get it down
Right.
under the 2,000.
Right. I didn't look on the plan to see that the erosion controls are exactly in the right, exact same spot.
And neither did we, so shame on us.
Okay, shame on both of us.
How about 1,800? Can we agree on that? 1,800 then?
It's fine.
Jerry? 1,800. Sold.
With the condition that we do our due.
We have a ledger for all of them.
Okay.
I agree
So
with
that
that.
probably
If
should
that's
be a motion.
acceptable to the
You need
board.
to take,
Just look at the formula.
Yeah. So I would move to fine them $1,800 for working in the wetland as they were instructed not to.
As a condition of issuing the certificate of compliance.
Correct.
yes.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Second.
I didn't even ask for any abutters. Any abutters, members of the public, question, comment? Seeing none, it's been seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Done, thanks.
Thank you very much. Again, my apologies for the confusion, and thank you for taking me out of order. I'm sorry.
All right, thanks. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
Scott. Oh,
Scott?
next on the agenda is informational, 700 Canton Avenue. That's what we were just talking about.
Yes, we will.
Okay. So,
So you heard the last discussion, Mr. Burke.
Yeah, I did.
All right, so anticipating that, I'm sorry, could you introduce
Sure.
yourself? and
Jim
tell us
Burke,
what this is?
DeSalle Burke Sala. I'm here representing tonight the clients, owners of 700 Canton Ave, who were issued a decision from the board last meeting, a negative determination to install a wood fence. And the fence, as it turns out, is an AZEC fence, a composite material of a polymer and sawdust and the like, and used in all sorts of environments. So my bad. It's a nice product. It's not the fence that I thought Judith and I were talking about. That
Well, but what happened, Jim? Did you tell them? what
yeah,
the order
you saw
was,
me
or-
talking to Jimmy DeSalle on the phone. He said it was wood. So at that point, I mean, I thought it was wood. As it turns out, the fence was purchased back in, I don't know, July or something like that. And, you know,
Did it really cost $90,000?
I heard it was 70,000, but
I feel better. 'Cause I can't imagine.
Are you thinking of putting in a fence?
No,
it's,
The members of the public, this is on Canton, sort of across from the entrance to the high school. It's a gray kind of fence? dark
Yeah.
Gray.
yeah, the thing, I guess from a perspective of the product itself and what the replacement with wood. I mean, I guess for the post, you'd end up with a PT post with, you know, maybe an encasement of additional wood on that. But now you're looking at a product, you know, a polymer that is, you know, maintenance-free, has no, you know, treatment on it other than, you know, an extruded polymer from in sawdust and the like. It's used everywhere, including, you know, on coastlines and the like. It's a durable, maintenance-free product. You won't be staining it in the future. You won't be.
Yeah, actually, Jim, I'm not willing to go over the substance again. You know, we
Yep.
had the discussion, we all concluded wood would be for the best, so we're not going to revisit that.
Fair enough.
As far as I'm concerned. The question is, a fine should be in order.
You know, I'm not here, you guys can discuss that. I'm not here to, you know, if you approve that, you know, the owners of the fence, the owners of the property, you can inform them of your decision. and they'll make their decision. So it was, you know, misspoken by me here saying that, you know, it was a wood fence. The plastic fence that I thought we were discussing was that, you know, that shiny, thin-walled
Vinyl.
PVC fence that I didn't think would fit. And you know, I look at that fence and it looks good, so.
I understood, and for the public's benefit, we were actually at the site because, and this has nothing to do with the current owner, but there were serious violations of our original order of conditions some, how many years ago? 7 or 8 years ago? When we issued an order of conditions, and the contractor changed a lot of them. So the new owner came back for a certificate of compliance, and we were unable to do it. There were so many differences, so many changes. The curb cut didn't go onto Canton Avenue, it went on to the side street, which is called Mergewood. I think there was some elevation changes. There was a trench drain that was supposed to have been built, and it was not. So that there were, you know, significant changes in the order of conditions. So knowing that this was coming, there was an escrow amount. So the fine that we imposed was $5,000, but it was attached to escrow funds on the sale, because the new owner had nothing to do with that. Now, while we were out there, we were talking to the owner, who is essentially the applicant for this RDA, which is a request for determination of applicability, to put in the fence. And we said, well, part of it's in the buffer zone, you must file this RDA. And then we had a discussion at our meeting, at our next public meeting. First one was a public meeting, second one was here last month. And at that point, we decided to issue a permit for a wood fence. And then lo and behold, it's not a wood fence. So that's why, again, the same issue is, you know, whether or not we can depend upon applicants to actually conform to the order that we issue. That's what we're talking about. I don't think there's certainly no malice involved in here. This is really a question of whether or not our orders are going to be obeyed or conformed with. So that's the issue. So, and we don't have anything before. We don't have a certificate of compliance. We could issue an enforcement order, I suppose. But I think maybe what we could do is see whether or not we could do a conceptual resolution, which might involve a relatively small fine. And because I don't think the homeowner knew anything about this. And at the same time, change our order as an insignificant change. And that's a term of art. If it's a significant change, then you've got to refile. If it's an insignificant change, you do not have to refile. And so the path of least resistance, I think, for us, is to come up with something that sort of atones for the violation of our order, but gets the thing closed and done. And so I suggest a small fine in the vicinity of $1,000.
Oh, I'd go along with that, John. That makes sense to me.
Do you have a fine or not fine, never mind the amount, do you think it's appropriate when our order is not
I do.
complied with? Hang on. Wendy, what do you think?
I worry about, again, being consistent with our decision, and I feel like we're seeing violations repeatedly. I mean, just 2 tonight, and I understand that we're talking about a very expensive fence, but it was our wish, and it was written into the order. And I feel like $1,000 on a $70,000-$90,000 project is a very small percentage for a violation.
So what would you, and I understand completely what you're saying, and it's not unreasonable. What would you suggest that we do?
Well, if I may, a portion of the fence, not the entire fence, but a portion of the fence was in
Our
the
jurisdiction.
zone, in the zone.
Right.
So not the whole fence. maybe 10%?
Maybe a little bit more than that.
Five.
Okay, but 25% of the entire fence
Okay,
is subject to the Conservation Commission, so it wasn't the
that's a
whole.
good point. Thank you.
So with that additional fact, do you have a sense of where the fine should be? If there should be one,
I think that there should be,
okay?
yes, and given that information, I guess about $1,000 would be in keeping with what our decision was on the last application.
Arthur, what do you think?
I'm fine.
So moved.
All right, now, it's not a motion because we don't really have
okay,
anything
that's right,
before
I'm
us.
sorry.
So Jim, I don't know if you, if you want to be the messenger.
My suggestion would be, well, you draft a letter, I think you do, it is a motion.
Well, we could do that. We could do a motion to have Steve or Kathy draft a letter and send it to the homeowner and suggest that this would be an appropriate resolution for the issuance of a certificate of compliance.
With a copy of the order of conditions, if they somehow didn't get that.
It was a,
Negative, yeah,
it was a negative determination.
With conditions.
with conditions.
correct.
Now, maybe they didn't see it, but,
There was another condition as well, and that was to create a small swale from the existing roadway to that catch basin. That's buried.
That's true. Has that been, did they do that?
I think the fence caught everybody off guard, so,
Not as of last Friday or
Right.
Thursday, not last Thursday, it was still not done.
Well, if you could add that to the letter and just suggest that it be done. And then at that, when that's done.
I think honestly, get the conversation going and see where it goes.
And what's the alternative if they don't agree to that? Or if they don't want to go that route? You said.
It would be an enforcement order
Exactly.
Okay.
for a violation of the
So
order.
that should also be,
And then the enforcement order has all kinds of implications.
for the benefit of the homeowner to be informed of the.
Sure, of the issue if it's not addressed.
Okay. Is everybody come, so why don't we formalize that and make a motion to have Steve write a letter to the homeowner suggesting that this might be a potential resolution?
so moved with a $1,000 fine.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor? Good, thanks.
See you soon.
Carry that back, thanks, Jim.
Yes, thanks, Jim.
Okay, number 4 on the agenda is notice of intent, 669 Randolph Avenue.
Evening.
Hey, good evening.
My name is. You were here before us, right? And you showed us the photos of your garage that flooded and the backyard flooded and, yes, okay. Couple of, about 2 months ago, okay.
It was in August.
Quite a bit of flooding.
My name is Andy Bowe, of 669 Randolph Avenue. I was here on August 13, I believe, asking for some help from the commission, and you talked to Steve after the meeting. He recommended to get with Deb, to get the notice of intent, and, yeah.
So the commissioners are aware, and so the public is aware as well. I had asked our agent, Steve Ivers, to go back and compare the wetland lines on our plan that accompanies this notice of intent, and compare it to the 7-Eleven delineation. Now, 7-Eleven is the 40B project, and that line was quite controversial, as some of us remember. It went up to DEP, there's a superseding order, and that's the basis of the 40B project. And that wetland delineation was extended last January for an additional 3 years. So those lines are in place. And I had asked Steve to go back and compare these wetland lines, and I think these were Brad Holmes'
Yes,
lines,
that's correct.
to basically the superseding order lines, and they're not the same. And I don't think that we have discretion. Jerry, you brought it up in the past and suggested, well, maybe wetland lines change. I think we're stuck because DEP overruled our line, not here, by the way,
Yeah,
but
not
in a
this
different
project.
section of the project. But so you don't get alarmed. The difference is going to be that your project is now within a 25-foot non-disturbance zone. But-
It was before, anyway.
Was before
Yeah.
anyway, okay.
So I don't
So
think
don't be alarmed at that, because we need to find that there's no significant adverse impact of what you're doing. And you got a problem, and we're trying to help you correct the problem in the right way. So don't be alarmed if we move this line back, because Steve, I don't know if you can demonstrate it, but basically with these lines,
I can,
Sure,
move
go
it
right
further away from the home. And
Just
Sure,
show where the original line was on the
So-
DEP.
right, so this is the line that Brad flagged right here, and this is the area. He's got it coming all the way up and coming back around. On the abutting property where you say it just was reaffirmed through DEP, this wetland flag continues along here and wraps down and around. And so this is the area where
Yes.
there's the change.
That's correct.
So we can adjust the wetland line to match that abutting property document that you were mentioning.
Okay, so Randolph Ave is down.
It's down in the bottom
Down the
here.
bottom, yeah.
Yep.
Right.
And where was the flooding that we saw the photographs of before?
His garage is here, the face of his garage, and you come down this driveway, and so the flooding floods right in here.
And this has historically been a very, very wet area.
There's, if you see right here, I know we're getting a little off topic, but right here I've got 4 inverts.
Yes.
There's 4 16-inch RCP pipes draining the DPW property that flow through here. And
Been an issue for us. We're aware of
so
it.
I think there's some, overgrowth in this area where this drainage pattern is, which has been blocking the flow path, which has created some flooding in this area, just isolated to this particular area, I don't know, down gradient.
Wait, can you repeat that? Are you saying that there's growth in here that's inhibiting the flow northward? I'm sorry, south?
Growth further, closer to the pipe.
Closer to the pipe, so like, right in
Here.
here, these are the
Yes.
arrows, these are the 4 pipes coming
Because
out,
the
right
fence
in
is,
here.
the fence is right there.
Yes, right in here, there's supposed to be a 4-bay, some riprap that's sort of
Actually,
overgrown.
it is built, but it's built closer to the street.
So it's sort of
In fact-
a little kitty
Yes.
cornered.
In fact, we had a discussion regarding, Deb was saying, it's backing up, and I said, how could it be backing up? It doesn't go uphill,
Yeah.
We had that discussion, and then I went out there and looked at it, and yes, there's an old 4-bay that has not been maintained for many years in that location. That's what it was backing up to. Instead of going down gradient and to the left, it was backing up down towards Randolph Ave instead.
This direction instead
That's
of
right.
this way.
Yeah. And the DPW director is aware of the issue.
But that redirection of the water is actually, it may be one of the contributing factors to the flooding of your garage or basement.
It might be, yes.
It would at least prevent the flow that comes down his driveway to get away.
Get away.
Exactly,
away.
yes. it
So,
would-
yeah, it could exacerbate it, yes.
All right, fair enough.
Yep.
All right, well, can you go, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I just wanted, I was concerned with the line, and
Yeah.
I think we're stuck with it.
So we can, if you provide the line, we can
Certainly. Happy to do it.
amend that line on the abutting property. So anyways, good evening, my name is Deborah Keller with Merrill Engineers, here with Andy Vo, property owner. As mentioned, Andy was before you a couple months ago. We joined in trying to help him with some, not only a drainage issue, but sort of a circulation with the site. Currently, right now, you can come down the steep driveway right here, and there's no place to turn around, and you risk your life trying to back out onto Randolph Ave out of that driveway.
Yes, indeed.
So we had two things to look at. One is to provide some parking and turnaround area so that you can come up here, turn around, and at least pull out of the driveway rather than backing out, as well as trying to address the flooding that happens right in front of the garage door. And Andy was kind enough to show me inside the house how much flooding there really was in one of the last big storm events, and I'm shocked at the amount of water that actually was flowing into the house. So what we've done is, again, Brad Holmes went out and flagged the wetland. He identified this as BVW into the rear of the property, and this finger that comes up following along the property line, he identified as BVW, but also a drainage ditch. And so that goes somewhat along the lines of the discussion that we had with the drainage and the flow kind of backing up in this direction. So it's not really a groundwater generated wetland, it's more from flow from those 4 pipes that are creating that sort of finger. Still BVW, and identified on the property as BVW. So we were looking to sort of regrade the driveway a little bit to try to pitch it as much as we can without major changes to the driveway, so that it's trying to turn it as much as we could away from the house. And we created a small, there's actually an existing paved apron right in this area, so we're trying to keep that, as well as a nice stone riprap channel along the driveway to direct water into a 4-bay and a rain garden that's located on the property, which will also collect added parking area and turnaround area, which we have a pea-stone diaphragm running along here to pre-treat the sheet flow from the parking area prior to the rain garden, with the ultimate overflow here. So as Steve mentioned as well, I was speaking with DPW, because to allow to get this all graded, this area is relatively flat with relationship to the house. So we would need to grade a little bit onto the town property to make that spillway flow in the correct direction. I did speak with Mr. Berkeley, Director of DPW, and he felt that was a good approach to this area, and he was aware of the drainage with respect to those 4 existing discharge pipes. I believe also in discussions that Annie had with you was that he had removed a tree within the 100-foot buffer, since his whole property is within the 100-foot buffer. He has since planted 4 pear trees. There's 1 green and 3 Asian here that he brought over from his previous property. We also are including some blueberry bushes in the rain garden, and we're open to any discussions if there was needed further tree replacement.
I'm sorry, how many trees were removed? We try to keep our 3-to-1 ratio.
Yeah, I believe the discussion was 1.
I removed some of the dead tree, but then at the last meeting, the committee said that there's 1 tree that still look like it's still living. So you guys asked me to replace 3, and I agreed to it. And at the meeting, you said to bring it as part of this notice of intent, and
Yes.
which is,
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
And those are the trees you planted, the green pear and the Asian pear? Those are the trees, the
four
green?
tree, yes.
Yeah, 4, I'm sorry, 4. Are those actual fruit trees? Do you get pears on them, or do they just flower?
I do have,
You do get pears?
yes.
Oh,
You said you brought them from another property.
I moved them from my house in Brockton. I sold the house without selling the trees. So I like the trees.
I like that.
well, how big are they?
The fruit or the tree?
The tree itself, like
Oh, yeah,
diameter?
There's, I think there's 3 4-inch and 1 2-inch.
Oh, wow.
I think you have it on the drawing.
I might have it back, so just.
You planted a 4-inch
Yeah.
tree?
3 4-inch.
4 of them.
What is the increase in impervious surface?
believe that it's approximately, I don't want to misspeak, so let me look it up.
And that's the driveway that will increase the impervious area?
The
Back
new
turnaround area?
turnaround area here increases the impervious. The existing pavement stops right at the corner of the house, right about here. I won't have it here.
Yeah, I'd wonder if you could make that paved area a little bit smaller to still get your, cars turned around, rather than that much.
Also, I know that I cannot put any salt in the winter because of the wetland, so I want to have a little area in the winter so I can, snow plow a little bit, yeah. I did talk to Deb about it. Initially, it was a little bit smaller, but I asked her so it has some room for plowing.
So I apologize, I don't have the total increase, but the total existing and proposed is 2,500 square feet on the entire property. So,
I'm sorry, existing and proposed?
and proposed, I added the two when we were looking at water quality for the treatment through the rain garden. Our calculations used both the existing driveway and the proposed driveway.
Okay,
So you're looking at probably about half of that.
yeah. I have no problem with that.
Well, the only issue is that the next question is, what are the runoff calculations and where does the water go? Because we've got water issues here that relate to another project. And it's a very sensitive issue. So we need to know what the runoff calculations are heading this way. If they're heading this way, if they're heading in some other direction, we need to know that.
That's the only way this property can go,
Is
is to,
this way.
yes,
Okay.
yeah. So we're capturing the existing driveway here and the proposed parking and turnaround area through, and treating it through this rain garden.
Okay.
So there is a portion of recharge that would happen in here for the lower storm events, and your overflow would be here.
And there's no existing,
There's no treatment
Okay.
or rain garden there now.
okay.
It's brush and debris at the moment.
So even with the present size of the driveway, you'd still be reducing the amount of water that would flow across the impervious area into the wetlands?
I believe we would. The required groundwater recharge under the stormwater management was, which includes, and again, we did it for both, we calculated it for the existing driveway and the proposed, was 88 cubic feet, and we're providing 271 cubic feet of storage and recharge in the rain
So it's a
garden.
lot less,
Yes, the requirement would be a lot less.
once it's completed, okay.
Yes.
Well, I like your shrubs for the rain garden.
Great.
I think, all season, particularly the winterberry, would be nice. The blueberries, the birds will get the blueberries, but.
I think
otherwise-
Andy's gonna try to get some of those blueberries too.
Okay. Good luck.
Gonna have to net it.
Any reason there's no perennials on the plant list?
We did not put any in at this point, but if that's an interest of the commission, we'd be happy to swap something out.
Well, one thing actually that concerned me was the footnote at the bottom of the planting schedule key, right here. It says
Yes.
that the type and quantity of plantings to be determined at the time of planting.
Well, we can coordinate that with Steve. Usually what happens is, depending on when they plant, it happens with landscaping, I'm sure you're aware that we may put something on the plant plan and then they
It's n-
can't find it.
it's not
Not
available.
available.
Right.
So then we have to substitute, but we could coordinate that with Steve if that's helpful, so that we pick something that's acceptable.
Sure. I'd be happy to do that. And that happens, it's a normal occurrence not to have some plants available at certain times.
In survival, by depending time of the year.
Right.
That was, my concern was a survival, just if
Sure.
there did have to be any swapping of the plants, just to make sure that they'd be able to survive in a rain garden environment.
Oh, sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would
You
suggest
heard
adding
our-
that as a
You
condition.
heard our discussion before, we try to be consistent about things, and when you take down a tree, we require 3 trees to be planted, and I appreciate that you planted these pear trees, and the fact that they're actual fruit trees is great, but we require native trees, these are not native trees. But the fact that you're putting the shrubs in, that would account for at least 1 tree and possibly 2. So then, there'd still be 1 tree native to plant. And why we do that is for wildlife and for many reasons, but I would still
The
expect.
wildlife will be eating the pears.
They will be, they'll be. So 1 more tree, I would say, still needs to be planted to accommodate.
What would be the diameter? 1.5, 2 inches?
1.5 to 2 inches at
I'm
best.
fine. That's fine with me.
We just changed it. You know, we've had other people with 2.5 to 3, so we have to be careful. I don't even know if there's enough room there. And I'm, as you know, I'm less hung up on the native with my Norway maples and all that. But is there room for another tree?
Well, we were thinking of either putting it back here
Yeah.
or even up in behind the rain garden, sort of buffering the property line would be 2 locations.
Sure,
For
sure.
one
Any
additional tree.
native tree you want,
Well,
dogwood, red.
I'd like to recommend that it's a tree that absorbs a lot of water,
Yeah,
rather than
That.
any native tree.
yeah.
Red maple
No,
is one of the,
yeah.
Yeah.
one of the best. Not the hybrid red, or the Norway red maple, which is also called Schreider maple. The regular Acer rubum, that's all, just Acer rubum. No X's, no quotes, no nothing.
Okay.
I have one other question or comment. In your mitigation measures, under, what page, mitigation measures, it says public and private water supply and groundwater. It says pesticides and herbicides shall not be used within the limits of a 100-foot buffer. And then on the next page, stormwater best management operation and maintenance plan, you correctly recite pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers shall not be used within the limits of the 100-foot. I'm concerned you're so close. I'd like to add fertilizers to, right now you've only got pesticides and herbicides. So I'd like to add fertilizer there
Sure.
as well.
Good idea.
And that would be consistent with your maintenance plan anyway.
Absolutely.
Any other thoughts, questions from commissioners? Are there abutters, members of the public that have a question, comment, suggestion? Are we ready to make a motion?
Moved.
What is it? With the addition of the tree?
Yes,
What size now are we saying? 2 inch?
Yeah, I think it should be 2.
okay.
2-inch caliber? Okay. And this may be difficult, but I've explained to somebody else, you might have heard me tonight, we have boilerplate conditions when we issue an order of conditions. Part of that is to keep equipment out of our buffer zone. I don't know how you're gonna do that unless, if the DPW is, if they're gonna cooperate and, maybe that's something that, that you could store equipment there, because you don't have any place to store equipment there to do this. And what we're concerned with is overnight storage of equipment with hydraulic lines, because they always pop and they just spew oil. And refueling is also a problem. That's why we say overnight storage and refueling has to be outside of the buffer zone. So my suggestion is, if you talk to Chase Berkeley or somebody, might
And
be a good
I would put a
neighborhood
good
to
word
do.
in for you,
Good. That would be helpful.
sure.
Okay, any other special conditions that we need? All right, with
So,
that said, there's a
Don't we need
motion.
two
What's it?
votes? We need two votes, one to
Yes.
commit, okay.
You are correct.
Yeah.
That is correct. And Andy, for your benefit, the two votes, we have a bylaw that you can't be within the 25-foot zone generally, but if you need to be, then we have to make a decision that there is no significant adverse impact to the wetlands. And that's our term of art. So we have to vote first under the wetland bylaw that there would be no significant adverse impact to the resources that we protect.
So moved.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All right, that allows you to build within the 25 feet.
Thank you.
And then the second motion, you already made it, to issue the order of conditions
Yes,
with those
Like a great
comments that
plan.
we've made, including the 2-inch caliper tree,
native tree.
native tree. With that said, is there a second? There is a second? And any discussion? All in favor? Good. You're good to go.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you very much.
you.
Great job.
good luck with it, yes, indeed.
I'm excited to see pictures of your rain garden.
Trying to get it done by this winter.
Okay, next on the agenda is 1425 and 1439 Brush Hill Road. I guess they go together.
The next one.
Did we do a site visit on this one?
Hello again. 1425 first, Jim?
Yes, please.
Certainly. Watch yourself there.
Don't. I'm gonna wait there.
Yeah.
All right.
That'll give me some time to make sure it's up on the screen, right? Does that look like the right thing?
Yep.
Yes, it is, because that's where you were at work. Let me
Yep.
just zoom in, Jim.
Yep, that's it.
Working right in there.
Yep.
Zoom in a little bit more. Okay, how's that? Better?
Works for me.
Good.
We're just stalling, Jim, all right?
Don't know yet.
You don't know if we're stalling?
Oh, you're I thought, who's installing?
Oh, no, no, no. We are
I'm
stalling.
already working ahead all the way to installing the pipe.
There you go. That's optimism for you. Let's see, is there any pipe? No, it's just this area, right, Jim?
Yep, yep. There's a small little catch basin just to, I guess to the north.
North,
Yeah, that's
this direction. So the catch basin's right there, right?
a little bit further up,
Oh, is it
the other
right?
direction, the other direction,
The other direction.
right? Oh, wait a minute. Let's see.
That's the
Yeah,
south.
It's right on that property line there. Oh, wait a minute. You're right. I'm sorry. I'm upside down.
Yep. So this is looking, south is north, south
Right,
is
okay,
up.
I gotcha. Yeah, so it's,
Further down?
no, further, I'm sorry, you were right the first time.
Was it right the first time?
Yeah, slide, you have that little pen? I'll show you.
Yep. Yep, sure.
Right there.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, yes, of course, it's right there. Yep, I see it.
While you're getting oriented, do you know where wetland 6 is? I couldn't find it. I might have just read right by it. There's a reference to, I've got 2, 4, and 5, but I couldn't find 6.
I can zoom back out. What, 6, or futz around? There's wetland 2, right there.
Yeah, I've got
Wetland
2, 4, and
5 is
6.
there.
2, 4, and 5, rather.
4 is there. And that's all that this contains, this plan.
That's all I could find on the
Right.
paper plan. But in the narrative, there's a reference to wetland 6.
6,
We can look
This
at
is
the
on the
next plan.
1425. It might be a typo.
it could be. I mean, the wetlands are compiled from several jobs that we've done in the area. You want me to start?
Oh, yes, yeah, we're all set to start, thank you.
Okay. Good evening, Jim Burke with the Selberg Sala, here representing Mr. Peter Hicks, who resides at 1425 Brush Hill Road in Milton. He has a large parcel of land that is located off of Brush Hill Road and off a private drive with several private drain lines that service the area. One of these drain lines runs along what they call Avenue A. It's a driveway that provides access to 1439 Brush Hill Ave, and provides, well, I guess frontage really. There's no other real, Mr. Murphy and Mrs. Murphy use this driveway to access their property. Along this driveway is a drain line that has since collapsed and is causing erosion of out the slope. It's visible when you walk it. What we're proposing is to excavate the pipe, remove about 20 feet of it. We think that's the extent of the damage, and reinstall the pipe to restore that hydraulic connection. Proposing erosion control, using small hydraulic equipment to excavate the pipe. We don't anticipate any clearing of trees to do this work. We've shown the trees, the significant trees in the area that I know we can work around, so there'll be removal of some brush and that nature. But I think it's a fairly easy and quick project to solve a drainage issue that can ultimately, cause some significant damage in the future if not taken care of.
I don't want to mix projects, but when you say that no significant destruction of trees, it's just this section.
Correct.
Is there any widening of the road on this project?
Next job.
Next job, okay,
Yep.
understood.
Right now, we just want to fix the drainage. And
Where does this water come from, Jim? From
there's a
the
catch
house?
basin right here, and just based on the topography and the flow that comes out of there, there's got to be some under drains that tie into it as well. And there's, some drainage that comes up from, I forget the number of that. The Wakefield Estate probably contributes to it, and
Peter Hicks. There's an extensive underground drainage system that services all the homes in the immediate 1910 subdivision. And best as we can discern, it does certainly pick up some surface water, but most of it seems to be some sophisticated system for picking up groundwater that's flowing off the side of the Blue Hill. So this at the point you're there, you've already got a confluence of 3 or 4 or maybe even 5 different underground pipes that drain different properties above. And by this point, they've all merged together and is taking one drain line down to the brook.
It was a pretty elaborate system, if I remember.
Very, yes.
And it accommodated sheet water coming down.
Yes, it accommodates surface water, you mean?
Yep.
Yeah, it does, and, until we did this project, or began it, and it had the difficulties, I thought it just grabbed surface water. But once we started exploring it, we realized that it must predominantly be
Groundwater.
somehow picking up groundwater.
And where's the outflow eventually?
it outflows, if you want to just pan
I'd
down.
be happy to.
see. It outflows right in here. where's the culvert?
Right, that's
There's
the
the culvert here,
There's the brook.
and the culvert here. This is the big one.
Yep, that's right.
It
you
goes
know.
under the road?
Yeah, yep.
This
It's under the
culvert's-
road. It's in good shape.
Yes, it is.
You know, does the job.
But aren't there two that go under the road? Are there two that go?
There's
under the
two.
road?
There's one here.
One that's in better shape than the other?
No, not really. It's just one's just larger, carries more of the flow.
Okay.
I think one handles the brook and the other one handles the drainage system, isn't that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, I thought when we were there that this one, the water's flowing this way, and I thought it crossed here.
Yeah.
But that's blocked. This one carries the water, which is essentially channelized, coming this way.
Right.
Is that correct?
Well,
Yep.
one handles, the large culvert handles the brook,
Yes.
and the small one, which comes angled just as you just showed,
Yeah, that's the small one.
Yep.
that,
Yep.
I believe, that handles the drainage system.
Okay. Yeah, one of the things that we talked
do-
about on site was cameraing that smaller one.
Right.
Just to make sure that the road hadn't compressed it over time, et cetera, that it hadn't been compromised. Is that still in
Yeah,
the plans?
Yes, it was cambered and it's intact.
But, good, thank you.
Can I go back a step, because I asked you about trees, and just in your proposed conditions, you're saying, we do not anticipate any trees greater than 6 inches to be cleared to complete the work. What about 4 or 5 inches?
Yeah, you know, Peter and I, we walked it. Like I said, and I'll stand by the statement. I don't think we're going to be clearing any trees at all. Anything, you know, I'll go as small as 3. I mean, there's really just, I mean, those big trees, and then
Yeah.
then just kind of shrub
Talking
kind of
about
stuff.
these trees here.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, there's not much there, actually,
Yeah, really
as I remember.
I mean, there's,
But when
as
you get further
back
down towards the brook, I thought there were more trees there, and some of them look
Quite a
like they're holding
That's-
the bank.
But that's not part of this project.
that's not part of this project.
So when we were down looking at the culvert, that's the 1439 project.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know where yours stops and
Well, this-
where.
this
This is just strictly fixing that pipe right there.
Right in this area,
That's it,
that's the
okay.
limit of work right in here, right?
That's it.
That's the limit of work, right around there.
Okay.
Yep,
I would say it's maybe a couple of days' worth of work.
pretty simple.
Actually, could you put that on the plan that you gave us? Could you put that limit of work so we can see it? I don't think it's on there.
But the erosion control, I guess, sure, I can put the limit of work in. I'm not too sure.
Just
on-
for the one
I mean,
file.
I would imagine access is we're gonna be coming from the top.
Yes.
But, you know, we're not gonna be clearing trees to access this.
It's lawn, pretty much, it's pretty much
lawn.
lawn.
It's like, yeah, I'd say it's lawn, almost, it's woods like to the 100-foot buffer.
Right.
And then it thickens up a bit, but not so where you can't maneuver a small track vehicle
Yeah.
to excavate the pipe.
So how many feet of pipe are you planning on replacing?
I'm guessing 20. There's maybe a 3-foot diameter eroded hole where the water kind of breaks out of the slope. So I would imagine that, and that's probably, you know, right in that location here. So I grabbed about 5 feet this way, and I grabbed 15 feet in the opposite side to just be able to grab the problem and fix it. That's all I anticipate. If it's more than that, you know, once we get into it, we'll certainly come back and see you guys.
And what, the stormwater management? What I'm really asking is, your claimed exemption is for a single-family, single residence
Correct.
project. And so that led me to believe, is this a separate project than the other one? That you're just fixing the isolated broken pipe? You're not connecting to
That's it.
Arthur's project?
That's the scope.
All right, and who owns the road? I was completely lost on that. I don't know if you made any progress. I know that Alan Bishop responded, but I can't figure out who owns the road. Do you know?
Yeah.
Sure. I think at this point, if I go from the back forward, that's easier. It is owned on one side by me to the middle, and the other side by Scheller. As you come back toward Brush Hill Road, eventually, both Scheller and I are supplanted by Andrew Hack, and Trong on the left.
Mr. Tron?
Yeah, Mr. Trong. And that is true almost till you get to the departure of A and B. At that point, well, it's irrelevant. We're way out of the any buffer zones by then.
Right, so if you own it to the middle, is there an easement for
There's an easement for
Mr. Murphy
Arthur
and Mrs. Murphy, yeah.
to the rear, yes.
And do you have an easement to each other?
Do I have an easement? I don't have an easement, well.
You own,
yeah,
you own
yes,
half the road.
yeah,
but you
yes,
can use
both
it.
myself and Scheller
Yes,
have rights to the road that's half on Scheller and half on me.
okay. That's what I was interested in. Okay, fair enough. Okay. Any other,
Awkward if they didn't.
any other questions from Commissioner?
Right. Very awkward.
Are there abutters? I know there are abutters, yes, so, anybody with a question at this time, or a comment or a suggestion? Is there anything else for discussion? Wendy, do you have a question?
No, I do not.
Okay. So this looks like an appropriate improvement of a drainage system. I don't see any issues. You know our boilerplate issues, we don't want equipment stored in the buffer zone or refueled there. But other than that, it looks like you're good to go. Is there a motion to allow the order conditions?
So moved.
Is there a second? There is a second. Any discussion? All in favor? You all set? Thank you very much.
Okay.
So next on the agenda is 1439 Brush Hill Road. Hey, good evening all.
Good evening, Jim Burke again with Selberg Sala here, representing Mr. Arthur Murphy and Mrs. Susan Murphy. Mr. Murphy sitting to my left. He lives at 1439 Brush Hill Road with the driveway that we were previously talking about. He's looking to remove and replace that driveway as it runs along. It's and I literally mean remove and replace. We are proposing to widen it from 10 feet to 14 feet. It's my thought as you walk this driveway, it's in significant disrepair. It's something that you're basically going to have to strip off the pavement, get rid of the pavement, remove it from the site. And then bring in another, add to that gravel box to support that new drive. We're proposing a water quality swale to pick up the stormwater. It's, we're increasing the width from 10 to 14, so we're at 9,000 square feet of pavement, and we're bringing that up to 12,600. It's our thought that with the
I'm
inclusion,
sorry, give me the difference again.
9,000 to 12,600.
Okay.
Additional 3,600 square feet.
You called it pavement. Could you describe that surface?
Sure. I'm anticipating 3 to 3.5 inches of bituminous concrete, class 1 Mass Highway spec, with a 12-inch gravel box underneath it. Currently, the road itself is thin. For, two-way access through this driveway is not possible in some locations. I've experienced it on a number of occasions. With the trees also encroaching into the roadway, we think that there are some trees in the area, and I think I know the one you're talking about is right, where's the culvert?
The culvert is right there.
Okay,
Right in
so
there.
there's a big tree, like right about there,
Yeah, just after the other,
and it's hanging. It's probably, I don't know, 36-inch tree. It's at about a 45, 60-degree angle, somewhere in there. That's gonna come down. The only access in to the property, it's a safety issue. And I think the 10 feet wide is also a safety issue. Emergency vehicles, ambulances, and the like are 8 feet wide themselves. So from that perspective, we think that the widening of the pavement is warranted. We're obviously proposing erosion control to protect the wetlands. We've provided, we are working within the 25-foot no disturb buffer, but it's our belief that we'll be working in the actual road shoulder itself. The shoulder itself is probably 20 feet wide. The width of, top of slope to top of slope with a 10-foot strip down the middle. So there's significant room to make this driveway safe, meet some semblance of stormwater standards, stormwater control, and not impact the wetlands whatsoever. So there's no alteration of resource area at all proposed for this project.
What about a tree survey for this area?
We haven't done one. I think, we certainly could identify the trees that we would recommend for removal. In my narrative, I think we talked about hiring a
PWS.
What's that?
PWS.
I'm sorry, well, right.
Did you agree on that? PWS?
We did finally. But yeah, a professional wetland scientist to identify the species and the health of the trees in question that we think that would warrant removal. There's several dead ones along the way as well, and they're just as large. That again create a safety issue of such. The access road itself is the pavement we're talking about is 900 feet, but the driveway itself is probably, I'd say, from Brush Hill Road, 1,400.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's a long.
How do you distinguish between the driveway and, this is Avenue A?
This is Avenue A.
So when does it become a driveway? I mean, is there a line, a demarcation, or is it?
Yes, there's a property line where Barbara Hicks' house is, at the end of, at the beginning of Andrew Hack's property. And that's where Avenue A actually begins, I believe.
That comes off the other Avenue B.
Is it the end of Andrew Hack's property closest to you,
Yes.
or the other end?
There's at that point there's access drives that go to the right and go to the left.
Right. Right.
And then there's one driveway right on
Oh, that, Avenue
A. So Avenue A, I think, would start,
are you talking about back where it splits off to Avenue B?
No,
I'm in a different area. I thought,
You start off at Brush Hill Road, and then you go on down. On the left-hand side is the old seminary,
yeah.
the large brick building, and then you go down to the major intersection there, and then we have a that's where the beginning of Avenue A, Avenue B is.
Right.
Marion, this is Marion.
I just thought I'd come up to the table for a minute here. I'm Marion McKettrick, and I represent the Murphys, not particularly for this application, but I've been following it. But in terms of land ownership and the ways, Avenue A on a plan, on the original 1912 plan, starts at Brush Hill Road and goes up to the beginning of the Murphy property.
So it runs-
So the whole
length.
way is Avenue A. Avenue B comes off at the intersection, so it begins at the intersection, goes back up to the
Okay.
properties that are up above. So technically, Avenue A runs all the way in. The name of the way is Avenue A. As far as the rights to the way are concerned, the 1912 plan, as well as there's a maintenance agreement that's on record that spells out over 3 pages what the rights and obligations are of each property owner on each of these ways. So they do own to the midpoint of the way, but they all abutting property owners have the right to use the entire right-of-way, the width of the right-of-way that abuts their property, and that also includes the right to maintain underground water pipes and drainage. So that's all spelled out, even in 1912, it was put into the agreement, and it's quite detailed. So, I don't know if that answers what you're
No,
asking.
no, it does, that's helpful.
Yeah, that's-
All right, thanks. So, could you in your, I don't know if it was in both of them, but I know in the first, the 1425, you were talking about no trees over 6 inches.
Right.
Is it possible for you to, to put tape on trees that you think will have
Certainly,
to be removed
yeah.
so we can take a look
The
at it?
thing- the trees that I'm proposing to remove, that I think that warrant removal, are the trees that are unsafe and create that could possibly create a situation, a bad storm or something like that. And that's it. It has nothing to really to do with the construction. It's just actually creating a safer way. You could
Some of those trees are right on the shoulder.
yes.
The shoulder's pretty deteriorated in a number of locations.
The thing is,
so-
you could still build this driveway, rebuild this driveway without touching any of the trees. I just think, honestly, from a long-term perspective, that's a mistake. If you're out there, you should take care of the situation.
Would it make any sense to have the limits of work staked and the trees identified?
We certainly
so,
can do
yeah.
that.
Yeah. This is one of the prettiest country roads in Milton. You drive down here, it's like you're in upstate Vermont. It's a lovely area, so, we don't want it to look barren. There's no need for that. We certainly need a site walk on it. We should look at, exactly, if you could have those trees identified for us, Jim, that would be perfect.
And I think you should survey it from 4 inches up, not 6 inches up.
Well, I honestly, that'd be quite an expensive endeavor for Mr. Murphy. I would suggest identifying the trees that we would suggest taking out, and that's it.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, that's what I
we're
meant.
talking,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
All right.
No, I agree.
Okay. I don't want to
Lot of trees
locate every tree.
Both Susan and I have no way out once we get down this road, and 3 or 4 years ago, you'll see the remnants of a tree that came down. They completely blocked Avenue A, no way to get out. We have no way to go at the other end. I've tried to gain access, even though we have an address on that other side, on Green Street. I tried to get access from the Hemingway people, but they don't allow me to have any access for in case of an emergency. The people we bought the house from.
Did you say even in the case of emergency?
Right. We've asked for in the case of emergency. People we bought the house from set up these alarm systems so that, because they were older, they were in their 90s, and I recently had a stroke, and 3 or 4 months ago, and there's no way out for me at all if the tree comes down. But I bought the house knowing that, but I didn't know I was gonna have a stroke.
Yeah.
Got to plan ahead.
It would be nice to be able to get 3 or 4 of these trees, when you walk it, you'll see they are gonna come down. Whether Mother Nature takes them down, but they'll be coming down one way or another. And so it'd be great if we could get that included with the widening of this road. This day happens to be 72 years ago. It was a happy day for my mother. It happens to be my 72nd birthday, and as a birthday gift,
I would like you to grant.
Oh, very
That
good.
sounds reasonable,
I love
right?
that. Nice ploy.
Nice, nice.
Today?
Today.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Perfect.
Pretty good. I don't think we ever had that.
Yeah,
Second.
Pressure's on.
yeah.
All right, so we've got,
Well spoken.
I have a question for Mr. Murphy.
yes, sure.
Mr. Murphy, would your driveway be just as serviceable if it was not 14 feet wide, maybe 12 feet wide? Just to try to minimize the amount of impervious surface?
I'm okay with 12 feet, that's a lot cheaper. I'm gonna end up having to pay for this myself. 12 feet's a
Yeah.
lot cheaper than 14, but I'm okay. Whatever I don't know what the road builder has for equipment.
I mean, that's almost 2,000 square feet of pavement that you'd be reducing. I would imagine it would save you a lot, and it would
I don't know
also
that
be
we
good
need-
for water
right.
quality.
I don't know that we need the actual pavement, complete pavement, but
We could do a hard shoulder, yeah.
And what about the ditch? There had to be an emergency ditch put in last year because it was during the winter time, the water broke out of the pipe that we're gonna repair. And then it would freeze up at night and it just slide right on down, so we put a little emergency ditch there, and I think, I was planning on putting in what's called, I don't know.
We have that in the plan as a drainage swale, a water quality swale. So we got you.
As you're going towards your house, is that on the left?
It's on the left-hand side, that's correct.
Yeah, I put this one on the right. Basically, I think, with the, just for gravity purposes, everything's flowing that way anyway. So I'd like to bring the water, instead of underneath the road, potentially underneath the road, I'd rather have it on the outside shoulder and bring it down to the wetlands and, not through the culvert.
So.
Oh, so you're on the right, not the
Yeah,
left.
I'm on the
So
right.
Heading
Which-
towards
If you
Arthur's
look at the
house.
plans, if you look at my
Which
profile,
is the west side, is that correct?
if you're heading towards Mr. Murphy's house, it's on the right.
On the right, that's the west side, right, of the roadway, right.
So, and we'll be staking that. You'll see the whole width. I'll stake the limit of work, and I can bring a section and show you how we're gonna build this new driveway.
Jim, would you agree with Mr. Murphy that 12 feet is just as serviceable as what you've proposed?
Like I said, I bring 12 feet. If you could put some hard shoulders on, I don't have a problem with the pavement. It's just a matter of getting vehicles past. There were situations that even I was involved in, that you had to back out for 400 feet to get out of the way, people trying to leave the property.
How
I
wide
think it's
is,
not on to
It's only
vote on
10
that.
feet.
no, how wide is the access drive to 333 Hillside? Do you remember? Because
12
that's,
feet.
I think it is 12,
that's,
yeah.
that's surfaceable, that's certainly serviceable, and I
But that
backed
has
up.
that has hard shoulders where you can.
Yes,
like,
it
swing to
does.
the side.
It does have hard shoulders, that's correct.
If we can put, honestly, I don't have a problem with the pavement width. You're just putting, a foot on either side of the gravel box, and that can support vehicle tires. That's it. So when you swing out to the, you don't go into soft mud, and in this particular soil, that'll exist. So you got to make sure you can deal with the drainage. You got to get it away from the road.
Okay. How soon can you identify the trees? I'm thinking of a site walk. How
Yeah,
soon could you get that, staked out, the work area?
I can get it done by not this Saturday, but the following,
All right, do you have the calendar?
That's the 26th.
26th.
26th, yep, that's the date.
It's good with me.
Good with me.
Good with me?
26th of,
October?
Okay?
Good. All right, so should we meet at,
The butters.
what's that? Abutters, yes, abutters. Are there any comments or questions from abutters or members of the public? Any questions? I think just so that you know this, we're planning on going out there, which will be another public meeting, but we invite any comments or questions this evening as well. Come forward, please. Good evening.
Good evening. For the record, my name is June Scott. I am an abutter of the Murphys, 75 Hemingway Drive, and also own property in Milton that also abuts the Wakefield estate, so that you can have a perspective of where I live.
I know the area.
Nick Vinke, good to see you all again.
Good to see you.
It's been a while. I'm at 60 Hemingway Drive, and I'm an abutter. And Tom, they all know you, right? I did.
You should identify yourself.
Yeah, just for the
My name is Tom Palmer. I'm
thank you.
representing Nick and June as a wetlands consultant.
Nick, where is your property on this map? Are you at this end? Nick, where are you?
I am.
Thank you.
Right here. I'm at the very end, I think, right? So here we go.
Yeah.
So this is proposed.
Over there on the right, Vinny,
Oh, over here.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the house.
No, that's,
You moved in, my new roommate.
it's Hemingway Drive's,
Line, right?
Yes,
Here's the
correct.
town line. Here's the little circle here.
Right.
Nick, can you hold on just a second?
That's
I've
the
already,
second
that's
side,
both
right?
sides. yeah. Perfect, thanks, go ahead.
So here's the town line, and Murphy's are here. Their house actually is in Canton on this side. So there are two long stretches here that you've probably seen from the other map. Two properties, two sections, one in Canton, one in Milton, and then I have another section that kind of is another parallel section, so I run the full length of the property on that side.
Understood.
Thank you.
And on this plan here, it's now a former John N. Vinke, is that correct?
John is my first name, but
You go by?
only the telesalespeople call me John.
I see.
So,
Thank you.
Where are you? On what plan are you looking at?
John, the colored plan, it's all the way to the
Oh, I'm
left-hand
sorry,
side.
okay, I've got a
The
different plan.
material
okay,
that was
yeah.
just given out.
Yeah, on this one.
Yeah.
All the way to the left, which would be south.
I'll just walk through my little note here to you folks quickly. As an abutter to the Murphys, I received notice of the above NOI that seeks to remove the existing 10-foot wide, 1,300-foot long driveway that traverses two wetland areas that are part of the Foul Meadow ACEC and replace it with a 14-foot wide paved drive with a 3-foot unpaved swale. I'm joined in opposing the widening of this drive by fellow Murphy abutters June and Randy Scott of 75 Hemingway Drive. You may know Randy. He's an avid, and he can't be here today, he's out at sea in the service of our country, but when he's on land, he's an avid conservationist, constantly looking for new and rare wildlife in our area. And so last year, he was cited by the governor for his work. He's discovered the pale green orchid in our area. They even sent out a botanist from National Heritage on that. And he's recorded a number of blue-spotted salamanders, and we've had interest from Dr. French, Dr. Kuber, and on the walk we had the Harvard scientist as well, as it's quite unusual to be this close to Metro Boston and see salamanders. And blue-spotted salamanders turns out to be a national, they call canary in the birdcage or type of animal. It used to be much more prevalent, now it's not. And they're interested, they actually asked me for a donation for genetic studies. They're undergoing now a genetic study, and there are a lot of other places that are participating. They're trying to find why it survived here and not elsewhere, as our environment changes. And he's also found some kind of unusually large insect. I don't know what that is. But he can't be here, but he's, of course, very interested. Our concerns relate to the extensive amount of destruction of wetlands and bordering vegetated wetlands that the plan proposes. We join with the sentiments of Mr. Jim Camo, Director of DCR Land Acquisition and Protection Program, when he indicated DCR's attitude towards Avenue A and the surrounding area during the Milton Planning Board meeting as follows. So quoting Jim, "The one group that doesn't have a vote are the turtles and salamanders that are and we are really working hard to protect out here. We view this as an important landscape, a regionally important ecological landscape, but also a culture resource landscape. So we would like you to know that DCR's strong preference here is to minimize impacts to the cultural and natural resources, which really are of statewide significance." Continuing, within the past few years, I attended a Milton Planning Board meeting when Avenue A was discussed. I offered a clear statement that DCR does not oppose zoning compliant new residential development along Avenue A and Hemingway Drive. But DCR looks to the Planning Board to preserve the rural character of both private ways out of respect for resource values of statewide significance, including the rare species that are believed to range beyond the Nesbitt polygon, and the likelihood that material remains from pre-colonial contacts that are present in this undisturbed area. In Milton, may not be as aware of the efforts that have gone on over the last 30 years. So this is Fowl Meadow, and this is also DCR. So there's all this DCR land. And over time, so 1985, 2007, 89, 2008, DCR has been picking up land, either purchase or donations. This has been, a way of protecting this resource. Now, ACEC, if you look at the legislation that created it, it envisions a partnership between private individuals and the state to maintain this kind of environment. This area here is what we call the old Blue Hill Farm, or the Hemingway Farm. And so that was a large farm, probably a couple hundred acres at some point. And what Harriet Hemingway offered to her children, she said, if you live on the farm, we'll build you a house and you get 20 or 30 acres. And so 3 of her daughters took her up on that, and her son Gus took her up as well. And that's the house that Bill and Leslie Weld live in, and he talks effusively about how he enjoys the neighborhood. So that was the start of it. And then subsequent to that, when the family started to move out and other generations came in, they created we call CRs, or conservation restrictions on the land. So the first one is 30 years, so this is per the rules of Massachusetts. One renewal of 20 years, and now another renewal of 20 years. So we have another 18 years to go, so to speak, and then that's all you can do. So as a result of that, folks in the last couple of years who own a lot of acreage have committed and have executed CRs in perpetuity. So we're talking roughly 75 acres has been put into this kind of conservation. And this is done really often with, this is just a gift. And the holder of the CR is DCR, or in one case it's Town of Canton, Concom. So that's really the effort that we're undergoing here to try to preserve that. So that gives you a little bit of background.
John, if I may, I'm thinking about the, when you bought your property, your house you're living in, you're so worried about the environment, why did you clear cut all the land from where your house is down to where the sun sets?
I didn't. It was there, it was always there. That's why I bought the house.
How many trees did you take down from your property when you?
All right, now
Zero.
all the comments need to be directed to
Zero.
the commission, not to each other.
I would just like to say that I'm a descendant of the Hemingway family, so I'm preserving and speaking for their, and spreading their legacy of conservation. I've also grown up in the neighborhood. The house I live in is the one I grew up in, moved away for a little while, and then bought the house. So I have known the people that have lived in the Murphy's house, the previous owners, very well, and know the property. The previous owners before them, the Langevins, were elderly in their 70s and 80s, not 90s, and did have some medical problems at the end. Were able to have medical, ambulances, fire departments get to their house in the event of an emergency with the width that it is. I'm a registered nurse also, so I am well aware of emergency situations, but that's the hazards of where we choose to live with trees coming down. I wouldn't be able to get out of my driveway either if a huge tree fell. But they have, throughout the years, it's worked.
But I'm not sure exactly what you're commenting on. Is it?
They're
let's say-
commenting on the road widening
Right,
because
that's
of
what I'm
emergency equipment. I am saying all throughout the years, the people that have lived in the house,
I
some
got
that
it.
have had emergencies,
I got it the
they've been
first
able
time.
to get there on a 10-foot wide road,
Right, I understand that.
period. Yep.
I got it. My question to you is, do you oppose any widening of the 10 feet?
Yes,
Because we heard a comment today, what about, from Wendy, what about 12 feet?
yes.
Would you
because
have the
of-
same opposition to
Because
12?
of the wetlands, I have wetlands that run down from the Blue Hills, the stream runs across my property onto the Murphys and then going on to Fowl Meadow. And I'm very concerned about any fragmentation and changes with the migration of the wildlife that cuts through that way.
What about repaving and improving the 10 feet?
I'd have to, see what the plans were and how it would be.
What about the drainage aspect of this plan?
The drain that, previous what we discussed, I didn't have an issue with the drain. That has to be repaired. So that an emergency situation doesn't happen with that. But as far as widening the road, I'm opposed to that.
All right, I understand that was what I was looking for. Thank you.
So I'm just going to go through some key points out of the NOI and make some comments on them. So the point, safer access to the property. I believe it's going to be accomplished within the existing 10-foot footprint by adding bump outs on the less sensitive land along the driveway. The house currently is serviced with water, and there's electric coming from across my property. But it's also serviced, as it turns out, by Canton Fire Department. So they came out, they come out every year, and I asked them recently when they came out, they were unrolling all the pipe or the hose. And I said, what are you doing that for? You don't normally do that when you come out. And they said, well, we want to check to make sure that we can reach the furthest house. And I said, oh, you must be going to the Murphy's house. No, he said, no, we're going to Denny Swenson's house, because she's partly in Milton, partly in Canton, but the Canton folks are her fire protection. So that, I wanted to put that in perspective. Secondly, I wanted to mention that, we've had a lot of conversations here over the last 2 years, as you can imagine, from when that plan came. And some of them have been friendly, maybe not so much now, but we had the chocolates, and we all appreciated Godiva, and we had a nice meeting in our house. And we tried to explain as a group that there is a real commitment here from this neighborhood to preserve it. And people have foregone substantial financial gain. So if you take the 75 acres and you lop off 15 for where you want to have your house, you end up with 60 acres at 1 acre zoning in Canton. At $250 an acre, you're talking $15 million that has been foregone in the recent past. So there is a real commitment, not to talk about the money that was spent on fighting Milton Muse, which really brought us all together as a neighborhood. When I moved here, I was not aware of all these environmental ins and outs and concerns, but that brought us all together, and we all row in that direction. So that's, you know, a factor here. Now, Dr. Langevin and his wife used my land. I had no issue with that. And that was a point of discussion initially, saying.
But used it for what?
They wanted to have emergency access. So he wanted to be able to get out, or I guess get out really, if his drive was blocked. So he would just drive a little bit on his front lawn and then would drive over a field that I have, which is across from my house. There's 4 acres there, and there's a big field. And that field is, I cut it down regularly. June has her parties parked there. We even have it plowed, so, you know, that would have been a possibility. But the requirement was for much more. It had to be basically a planning board emergency access qualified. That was the ask that I was getting, and that meant putting down construction of some type, whether it could have been gravel or not. But the restriction that I'm under is it is a conservation land, so I can't do anything to that land other than how it is there. So I did look with Mr. Murphy about creating a whole driveway, and that involved, I think we were all shocked, hundreds of trees would have had to go down to get to where he was proposing his emergency access would be, if he was going to do it. He didn't want to go across my land to do that, but there's no obstacle to that. Dr. Langevin did it a number of times, and he had a small car with a big car. That shouldn't be an issue. So anyhow, let me just quickly then go on to a couple of these other points. Belief that the proposed project is not subject to the provisions. This is now the NOI talking. Belief that the proposed project is not subject to the provisions of Mass DEP stormwater management standards because the driveway provides access to a single-family home. So it should be noted that this driveway has been the subject of much discussion, as I just talked about, in front of the Milton Planning Board and at neighborhood meetings on converting the subject driveway to a qualified town road that would serve 3 or potentially more new residences along the drive. Attached is the conceptual subdivision and the private way improvement plan from October 23, 2017, created by the Burke Associates. On the attached conceptual plan drawing, you will see that the subdivision plan called for widening the drive to 14 feet plus 1 foot either side gravel shoulders. There are no swales indicated, and the roadway meets the existing grades on both sides. While this plan was presented as conceptual, it did elicit comments from the Milton Planning Board, including concerns about the degree of destruction of wetlands within the ACEC, and it was suggested that the plan be reviewed by the Conservation Commission before further consideration from the Planning Board. So that's how it was left. That's, as far as I know, it has progressed. Point C, Milton Wetlands Bylaw Section 4 request. So there's a request in the NOI. The Commission may grant relief from this Section 11 only if the Commission finds that granting such relief will not have a significant adverse impact upon the interests protected by the bylaw. Portions of the driveway to be reconstructed fall within the 25-foot non-disturbance zone. And that is underlined here. The area of disturbance in the 25-foot no-disturb buffer is 3,955 square feet. This is a project to maintain existing infrastructure that has serviced the existing single-family home for generations in the town of Milton, Canton. A waiver from this local bylaw is appropriate for the construction to proceed. Not, according to Ian Cook,
Can I ask you a question? And I don't mean to interrupt you, so don't lose your train of thought, but that 3,955 square feet, I thought we heard a similar from Jim Burke, or a change in impervious surface from, no,
He's
9,000
talking about the work inside the 25-foot no
I
disturb.
know. What were you talking about?
I was talking the entire job.
But if you're going from 9,000 to 12,000, that's 3,000 square feet. And Nick is talking about 3,900 in the 25-foot. What am I missing? The math doesn't work here, I don't think.
It's a matter of the amount of limit of work within the 25-foot buffer is 39.
If you're going from,
Well, that's of the 12,000.
Of the 12,000.
That's that's how the math works. It's 3955 of 12,000.
of the 12,000,
Right.
all right. So you weren't talking about,
Right.
your increase in impervious surface is 9 to 12.
The existing impervious surface is 9,000 square feet.
Increasing it by 2,500.
I'm increasing by 2,500, and actually and within that 9,000 square feet, actually, there's probably some shoulder in there as well. But in that limit of work, that includes that 9,000 square feet, is 3,995 square feet of 25-foot no disturb buffer alteration.
So including new impervious surface and old?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly right.
All right, I get it. Nick, sorry, thanks for the clarification and proceed. I apologize for interrupting you.
Sure. So, though he was not able to attend this evening's meeting, Mr. Ian Cook, Executive Director of the Ponset River Watershed Association, has indicated, had I been able to come, my main point was going to be to remind the commissioners that the ACEC, that in the ACEC, the wetland regs raise the standard for allowing impacts to freshwater wetlands to no adverse impact. See section 1024.5 and 1055.4E.
That's correct.
And would eliminate the customary option of filling 5,000 square feet of wetlands with replication. It is also important to note that in an ACEC, the limited project, also known as exception for an access road, does not apply. So with this in mind, at the very minimum, it appears that the portion of the project proposing wetland fill cannot be built. And just to remind us of 1024.5, when an area subject to 310 CMR 1021 through 1037 has been designated, has been designated an area of critical environmental concern by the Secretary of the Environmental Affairs pursuant to CMR 2100, and when the Secretary has made a finding of the significance of the area to one or more interest of NGL 131, paragraph 40 of Chapter 40, the issuing authority shall presume that such area is significant to those interests. When a portion is any portion of a designated area of critical environmental concern is determined by the issuing authority to be significant to any of the interests of NGL 131, any proposed project in or impacting that portion of the area of the critical environmental concern shall have no adverse effect upon those interests except as provided under 310 CMR 1025-4 for maintenance dredging. And then if we look at 1055-4, general performance standards, where the presumption set forth in 320 CMR 1055-3 is not overcome, any proposed work in a bordering vegetated wetland shall not destroy or otherwise impair any portion of said area. Notwithstanding the provisions of 310 CMR 1055-4, the issuing authority may issue an order of conditions permitting work which results in the loss of up to 5,000 square feet of bordering vegetated wetland when said area is replaced in accordance with the following general conditions and any additional specific conditions the issuing authority deems necessary.
I don't mean to interrupt, Nick, but you don't have to read us the regs.
Okay.
Okay,
Sure.
that's what we deal with, that's
Okay.
really our
I just
job.
wanted to, I didn't know what it was, I wanted to.
So
Okay.
the question I have is, where is there any BVW filling on this plan?
There is none.
Can I respond to that?
Respond to what?
That question about where the
sure.
BBW is. Yes?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Please do.
I'm responding to the question of
where the BVW may be on this plan. Because there's a question of whether any will be filled. That's a very reasonable, legitimate question, and I hope at the site visit we can resolve it. But if I could point out what we can see on this plan. We have been there, we have come down from Avenue A. I have a set of like 40 photos I took in December 2008 for the first Milton Muse site walk. And it's a little confusing because there are no contour lines in these wetlands. This is all coming down from Blue Hill. And these are actually two different stream corridors. There's one here, goes to this culvert, and one here. This stream, and I don't understand why the stream isn't mapped, because your bylaw section 11 says any bank, a stream has a bank should be mapped so we know what the impacts are. Instead, you just know the stream is in here somewhere. But what we do know from looking at Topo maps is the watershed of this stream goes to the top of Blue Hill, comes down Blue Hill through the Trailside Museum, goes under 138 where it picks up 8 catch basins, then goes into that big concrete structure by the more Montessori Thatcher School.
That has not been maintained very well.
Yes. Now, the story I heard is Mrs. Wakefield made the state build that.
That's right.
Yes, because of the erosion on her property from the land coming down off Blue Hill and exacerbated by the runoff from 138. So this is a significant stream that has a watershed of about 1/5 of a square mile. And where this culvert goes through, you may remember the culvert, it's a concrete pipe about 24 inches diameter that sticks out, and an overhang here in the water spews out because this embankment here is quite large, and it's faced with river cobbles set in concrete. You may have seen those. This plan doesn't, I don't really understand where the new road is going to be. Is it between these two lines? Is that defined, the new road? Is that the case?
The shaded area, more or less. So remove and replace, Tom.
Well,
Tom, you're answering the question, I think, about where's the BVW filled?
I'm saying that if you're in between these lines and you're widening this road, you're going to be in the BVW.
As stated earlier, if I may, it might speed us up a little bit. There is no proposed alteration of BVW or bank in this. We're staying within the shoulder of the constructed driveway. All the work is going to be within that driveway.
As I was looking at the photos tonight, I noticed that the slope of the embankment is pretty significant in this area. And it just, because you're going from 10-foot pavement to 14 plus 3 for the swale, you are nearly doubling the width of the road. You're going from 10 to 17. It just doesn't make a lot of sense that you could nearly double it without having major retaining walls to stay within that shoulder you're talking about. So I think my own issue with this plan is it doesn't show the stream corridors. It doesn't have any cross sections of before and after on the road. And it doesn't show what, if anything, will be done with the culverts. When the stream drops out of the lip of a culvert, that's a very adverse impact to the continuity of a stream. So, because organisms can't leap up into the pipe and pass.
But that's an existing condition.
That's right. But if we're looking at rebuilding that road, I think something that ought to be thought about is what could be done to that culvert to make it more friendly to this very valuable habitat.
As stated earlier, Mr. Murphy
Maybe a box
has got
culvert,
significant
maybe
expense.
This is not, finish it, and then you can ask your question after you're done.
Let me finish, please. Yeah, a box culvert, maybe even a bridge like you did on Woodland Road, something that would improve the passage of wildlife under the road.
That could be in the
All right, thank you.
future, but at this point, we're just looking to repave and
I understand.
rebuild the driveway.
So the answer to the question is that you
I
believe
think
the filling will be at the culvert area?
I think, well, the filling is entirely along that.
There's no
Okay.
change in grade
Roadway.
proposed. We will
Understood.
we'll stake it in the field, and we'll identify the issues from there.
All right, and can you run can you add some topographical lines?
To go out there and topo the wetlands and identify the stream where it has no impact with regards to the, what's the word?
Don't they already exist?
It
We've
has
been
no
out there so
impact with
many
regards to
times.
your jurisdiction, is all I'm saying.
I'm sorry, say again?
It has no, you have jurisdiction based on the BVW staked. Asking Mr. Murphy to pay my survey crew to go out there and identify the contours and the bank edge will have no impact with regards to how you.
Doesn't it already exist, Jim?
Say it again?
Doesn't it already exist?
Not to my knowledge.
This has been mapped so many times, I can't believe it's,
I don't think we ever topoed the wetlands. I'll be honest with you. I don't think it's ever been done.
And nobody even did any mean annual high water or bank flags at all?
Not to my knowledge.
Surprised.
What you're looking at is the extent of that 40B project that was proposed a few years back.
but we had one before that even.
Yeah.
We've had so many projects in this area.
This is, we have a lot of information out there, let's put it that way, and the wetlands topography is not part of it.
All right. But what about, can you superimpose like a USGS? Does that have any stream channels there?
It does not.
I understand if it's not a,
It does not.
green line, blue
it's-
line.
It's been dry every time I've been out there.
What about using the Milton 1-foot contour data layer? There is such a thing.
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Arthur and Susan should, have your survey crew go out there, but I think the data exists.
Yes, I think so, and I think it's right in the 1-foot contour data layer.
Okay. Can you just take a look at that, Jim?
Yeah, call Alan Bishop and ask him.
I did draw both streams on a plan, and I did it by using the USGS topo contours because I could see at the contours where the V's were.
Sure.
Indicating
Down
Right.
gradient. Yeah,
Yes,
of course,
and
the
you
Vs.
can, it wasn't hard for me to draw them in.
Yeah, you can interpolate the Vs.
Yeah.
If, at worst.
All right, I'm trying to simplify this. I don't want any extra expense to anybody.
Right.
All right.
I think the site walk will be very helpful. Here's an area where the culvert is, and you can see the road goes right up to this side. So you'd be talking at least 7 feet on the other side.
Yeah, We've been there a lot, as you know.
So make sure, I would suggest that the engineers make sure that the limit of work, total limit of work, and/or erosion control locations are staked within every 50 feet or so, just so we can really track it very well. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
It does, and as I look at this, I've got your proposed erosion control line.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, but is that the extent of the swale?
That includes the swale.
It includes it.
Yes.
But I mean, does the swale go right up to that erosion control line?
The swale itself is more or less a stone, crushed stone channel that is level with the road, so it has a lot more permeability. If you look at the detail, it's crushed stone right up to the surface where you can you'd be able to drive on it and with geotextile fabric underneath it to allow infiltration and actually allow it and transmit the flow towards the wetlands at the bottom.
All right, but
You won't even see the flow.
I'm looking at your driveway cross-section there.
I believe what he's saying is that the difference between the roadway surface itself and the bottom, apparent bottom of the swale is only a couple of inches.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
It's like it's a 12-inch deep crushed stone swale, but where the water flows through the stone.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm looking at the detail, it's on the map.
Right.
I know, you don't have it up there, it's on the next sheet.
It's on the next sheet, right.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold on, if I get to the next sheet here or not. Let's find out.
But as
Our intent is not to change the grades out here at all.
Well, that's what the details suggest. I'm just looking at, and I'm asking sort of the outside extent of the water quality swale.
It's right there.
Does that correspond to the line that you've drawn here on the map?
Corresponds with the limit of work, yes.
That's what I need, thank you.
And behind you, John, is,
That's it, right.
okay,
So what I was just asking is this line here your limit of work?
Correct, and I can revise that to include the erosion control if you wish.
Is there any swale there currently, anything
No.
like that currently? No.
No.
So how does that affect the blue-spotted salamander and other amphibians who are trying to walk in this area? Can
Trying
they
to
walk
walk?
on stones like that with that
Sure.
fabric?
Yeah.
the fabric
It's-
is
Fabric's underneath.
underneath.
Fabric's underneath, it's a crushed stone surface, and
Right.
salamanders, I assume, can
Go across.
traverse crushed
I
stone.
don't think assume is good enough. I think we need to know because they're endangered in Massachusetts.
What's the largest stone size?
Inch and a half.
Inch and a half.
Yeah, inch and a half. 3/4 inch and a half.
Okay, so, yeah, they would be able to make it across an inch and a half stone.
All right, those are my questions to set up the site visit. Are there other questions from commissioners to prepare for the site visit?
We need a time for the site visit.
These are,
Let's do
26.
9 instead of 8.
what did we do? Didn't we already schedule one?
26th.
We
26.
scheduled the date, but not the time.
Ah, okay.
We usually start at 8.
Yeah, let's do
Yes.
9 instead.
You sleeping in, are you?
Sleeping in?
Yeah, October, the sun is up late.
All right.
We'll do 9.
9 o'clock it is.
All right, if I may, the last point I wanted to mention was on the, in the NOI, the butters on the road were mentioned except for DCR, and this may be new news to some people here, but the Schellers have gifted a portion of their property, which is in the wetlands area, this wetlands area, to DCR. So they should be included in this evaluation. And that's my advice, is that Nancy Putnam, that's her role there as Director of Ecology and the ACEC program. She's the designated state person to give that kind of advice. And then for the site walk, I'll invite everybody to park on the field that I've been talking about, where you can see if it's accessible or not. And we'll see if the Murphys would find that as an alternative to some of this work, that they be allowed to, like the Langevins, to cross the field. But again, I cannot change the subsurface of the field or any of that sort of thing, because I get in trouble from all of our neighbors from that.
Are you accessible off of Green Street?
Well, you come down Hemingway Drive,
Yeah,
and then right where the gate is,
yes.
just past the gate on the right side, that's my field there. And then June it's also
Yes.
your field.
Yep,
so-
we split half the field.
And we plow that sometimes, if you have a, New Year's Eve party, that kind of thing. And that could be plowed all the way over to the Murphys. We use the same plower, and, it's feasible. I didn't think it was possible to plow grass fields, but it's thick and it's strong. So that's an emergency option.
What is the address of that location?
60 Hemingway Drive.
Thank you. And you were talking about the DCR property. Could you describe where on this plan it might be? Is it right here on the southern
It would
extent?
be the green, on that part there.
This
yeah.
portion, so it would be the northern extent of the Schiller Family Investments LLC, book 33377, page 494. Okay, thank you. So basically, it's the area just across the roadway in the wetland,
Where the culvert is, yeah.
where the culvert is. So it's down gradient of the culvert, that whole down gradient wetland.
Because that land had no development.
Potential.
Potential.
Right.
And it also ties in, this thing goes all the way down. This is part of the denouement, as we got resolved from Milton Muse. We had, there was a lot of good work from DCR and from the Schellers in
Sure.
terms of trying to make this all work.
Right down into the reservation.
Right.
All right, good. Are there any other
That's helpful, thank you.
folks that would like to ask a question or address the issue?
I had a question, but that was the prior item. I cannot
Can you come forward, Peter, and just use a microphone?
It's the prior item. I no longer recall. Are we approved to fix that pipe, or do we need to wait for the site walk? I can't remember.
No, you're approved.
You're approved, you're good.
You're good to go. Thanks, Peter. All right,
Jim, on your list of abutters here, I see that you did notify the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Who specifically did you notify? Did you notify Ms. Putnam?
The butters are provided by the Milton.
Assessor's
office. They provide stickers and off they go.
Right.
Well, I think then, Steve, we should specifically, rather than just going to a department that, might get a pile of nails.
Oh, yeah, it's to an administrative assistant or somewhere in
Yeah, I
the
think it would be
building.
prudent for us to notify specifically then this woman who is responsible for the AC.
Yes, she was here earlier this year.
That's right.
She,
That's right.
she presented
Yes.
the mile a minute weed, et cetera, along Brimmer Road. Yeah, I know her very well.
If you could notify her about the sidewalk.
I'd be
So
happy
that she
to.
could pay some attention, thanks.
all right, Arthur, and Jim, is that good with you if we
Yep.
meet at Hemingway? The Hemingway side? Beautiful. All right, good. All right, thanks, folks. Look forward to seeing you on the 26th at 9 a.m.
Thanks for coming in.
You're going soft. You're going soft.
You haven't been on this site. You'll enjoy it.
I'm excited to see this. Okay. Yeah, okay. All right, good to know.
Next on the agenda is number 7, notice of intent, 693 711 Randolph Avenue, continued hearing.
You look a lot better than me, I can tell you. I'm almost 69, I'll be 69. So,
Hi, good evening.
Good evening, Brian Levy, Beverage and Diamond for the applicant. Just to refresh the board's, the commission's memory, this was an application, an NOI for the apartment project on Randolph Ave. It was filed several years ago. There was then a lengthy delay associated with the hearing up at the Housing Appeals Committee. And that decision was issued by the Housing Appeals Committee last December. And what we endeavored to do after that, after we had to take a step back and go over to MIPA to get a determination that there was no ENF required, with the MIPA folks agreeing with our characterization that the crossing was going to be less than 5,000 square feet. And what we endeavored to do after that was to put everything back in front of the commission because it had been so long that this matter had been pending. We bundled all the papers back together again, and we put everything together back in front of the board in April of this year. And one of the things we requested in April was that the peer reviewers be assigned so that we could really dig into the meat of the issues on the merits and have a full conversation of those, and then have you folks issue your ruling. And this is our 6th hearing since we refiled all the paperwork, and we are looking, again, for the designation of the peer reviewers, and hopefully we can make some progress on that this evening.
Sure. We did receive additional, I don't know about all the information last April, but didn't we receive some information last month?
Yes,
Yes,
there
we
was
did.
some additional information, but the bulk, the vast majority of it came back in April.
True. But there were changes in your hydrological calculations and stormwater runoff.
There were some
and
very
things.
recently, yes.
All right, so, actually, I'm going to have to defer a little bit on what your real question is, where are we on our consultant? Steve, can you give us any report on what we've heard back? I know, I've seen 2 responses, one from John Chessier and one from
CEI,
CEI.
that's right. And that's the update. We have-
That just came in today, and
That's correct.
I don't even know the gentleman's name that was associated with CEI.
Matt
Sorry,
Doy-
buddy.
Matt Doyen
Not doing.
was the one, and Matt Lundstedt. There's two Matts.
Okay. All right. And those are, that's public info. Have you seen
I
whatever
haven't
they
seen
submitted?
anything.
Okay, they'll go into the public records file. We could probably send it to you. That's not, by email, rather than having you go to DPW.
Yeah, I think we talked about this last time, that the requests that were going to go out to the peer reviewers, I was going to get a copy of them. So I don't know, have any gone out?
I thought you did, yeah.
Yes, 4 have gone out. 4 requests have gone out. We've gotten 2 back. I did not have your email.
Well, that'll do it. BLEVEY@bdlaw.com.
I will send you what went out, and do I send what came back as well?
Sure.
Fine.
And the ones that have come, I'm sorry, I didn't interrupt.
The question is, one came back, but that was an early response without knowing the entire scope. So we
That's
have not-
correct. Do we know,
we-
that's John Chessier.
Right, and
I
we
think
don't
that's
know
how-
whether he is going to respond to the second request or not.
Okay.
There was a very short request by email back 2 months ago.
Yes.
And then recently, we put a little scope together, request for proposal together, and it went out let me think, it was early last week, is when it went out.
So, Mr. Chairman, in your letter of August, you had identified 3 consultants that you wanted to hire in 3 separate areas. And I wonder if you can tell me which of these areas have the people that have written back, what type of consultant are they?
General engineering consultants.
So this is the civil.
3 separate consultants.
No,
No.
no.
Well, we didn't, I actually didn't know whether or not we needed a separate hydrologist, because I think I put that in the letter, that I
did.
wanted a hydrology study
And-
and a constructability
Right, and
analysis.
the request for proposal noted that if they did not have a hydrologist on staff,
Yeah.
they could sub it out, which is the way to go with that.
Right. So the 2 that you got back,
Again-
both are just general civils.
No, the one that we got back after the RFP went out, the lengthy RFP, rather than just a sentence, went out, is a full-service civil engineering company.
And is that the CEI?
Exactly, CEI, and they have 3 locations. You can Google them and look them up. Yeah.
Sure, so those are the 2 Matts,
That's correct.
Matt Doyen and Matt Lundstedt?
That's correct.
Okay, so they're civils, and they potentially could sub out the hydraulic.
If they don't have somebody on
I
staff, and
think they have hydrologists on staff.
I believe they do have a hydrologist on staff, yes. Because I've seen them in Situate, as a matter of fact, where you'd had some experience.
So if we can see that, that would be great. And if we can get them,
Sure.
see their proposal, understand what the scope is, see what the dollar amount is, we'll look at it. I'm sure we're going to approve it, and we can get going.
Yes.
And once we have, let's just assume for a minute we have CEI on board. Are you going to be looking for more consultants, or is this going to be it?
Well, it went out to 4,
We went out to 4 total. We only
Yeah.
have 1 back from the 4.
right. It's
So-
it's only 1 from the 4.
I
We
see.
had one who had done a preliminary proposal, but without the full scope of work.
Exactly.
And so besides CEI, to whom were the other 4 requests sent?
Chesia?
Oh, can you hold on a second?
Certainly.
Yep. You're all set. We just had to flip the tape.
Understood. No, I've done these before. Is Chessier the person, or is that the name of the company?
Both.
Okay.
John
So-
Chessier.
Okay, and so that's the second one, and there are two others.
VHB, you are acquainted,
Yep.
and I've just blanked on the fourth. Remember,
It's
John?
another big one, and I don't,
It wasn't Niche.
Beta?
No, it wasn't Beta.
Worsley Witten?
No, no, what, it wouldn't have been Husley Witten for me, and there's a story behind that. I gave you all a copy.
you did, I know.
Hang on. I will find it in a moment, okay? Let me, I'm sure I have it. Right here. Sorry to take up the time,
No problem.
but I think it's useful. RFP. Location speed. Don't. Here's my letter. Can't seem to, wait a second, can't seem to find it right, oh, here we go. Let's try this. Here we go. List of engineers. Oh, of course, Amory, sorry.
Sorry?
Amory, Walter Amory. Yeah, forgive me. That's who the fourth one is.
Well, what's the company?
Amory Engineering,
Okay.
yep, down in Duxbury.
So if, Mr. Chairman, if one of those four is on board,
Yes.
is that going to be your team? Or is there going to be, are we going to be sending out more letters for other purposes?
No, I don't think
It's
so,
not necessary.
Okay.
no.
So we just need to get one of these four on.
Yes,
and
exactly.
We'll send them the paperwork. Okay. And is there a, so these four went out this past, within the last week or so?
Week ago yesterday,
Okay.
or thereabouts, yes.
Okay. So if you can send us those, and as the responses come in,
Be happy to.
we get those, and then we can just, if we may, send Steve an email saying, we're good with this one,
Yes.
and you can release all the paperwork to them?
I have provided quite a bit of paperwork to them.
Yes.
That helped them develop their scope. Pardon? Yeah.
Yeah, you'll see it, because it's in the proposal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the attachments. I mean, you have them all, but you'll see exactly what they have.
What, yeah, exactly, what. That's yeah.
Yeah, the only issue, Brian just asked a question, Judith, and I want you to hear my comment on your question, and that was, these civil engineers to whom you sent the request for proposal, is that it, or are you going to send something out? We actually, within the scope of work, were somewhat limited to essentially hydrology, the mounding component, the alternatives analysis with the concrete plank bridge on piers, and the constructability as to the, whether or not there's enough room to actually cut that close to the 5,000 square feet. But you had brought up in public session, and we had a discussion, and I think, Jerry, you also brought it up, this whole issue of whether or not we have jurisdiction for a traffic study. We have not concluded that. I have concerns that it might be beyond our jurisdiction. You suggested that we might be able to tie it to our jurisdiction with respect to air quality and water quality because of the
Particulates, yeah,
increased
that come out of the
buses and
buses
traffic
in
and
particular.
whatnot. So we should put that on the table, because we have not put that within the scope of work, but it was an issue that we addressed before. And I know you, Jerry, I know you had some thoughts on it, and I think, Judith, you did as well.
It's because the traffic on Randolph Ave in the last 5 years has probably doubled.
Last
in
year.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, so, and with the number of buses that go on that route, and they're about the filthiest buses you can see. They're not the LNG ones. So with the diesel exhaust that's going by there all the time, I think it would impact, and the stream is directly behind the street. I mean, it's so close. I think a traffic study would be warranted in terms of seeing if there's an impact on the wetlands as well.
But who would do that? I mean, I know there are traffic engineers that can say, oh, there are, whatever, 500 cars an hour, or whatever the numbers are. But wouldn't we need somebody to actually relate that back to water quality or something that is jurisdictional to us?
And then
What
how do
kind
you-
of an
how do
expert
you-
would do that?
And the question is, how do you develop a scope for something like that? What's the scope? How would, I don't know how I would address a scope.
Well, one of these engineering firms that is,
Well, VHB, for example, is a traffic study firm. That's what they do. That's their primary experience and expertise. But how would you scope a traffic study for wetlands impacts is the question I have. I don't know how to do that.
But I can't be a case of first impression. It must have been done at some time, it seems to me. So maybe that's a question you put to an engineering firm to say, has anyone done this sort of study before and found a connection, in that regard? Because it's significant how many more cars are on that road. It's
Yes.
probably
So, Mr. Chairman,
50% more in the last 5 years.
I hear you. And what we would ask is that we proceed with the four that we have and we get that piece of it going.
Oh, right, I didn't mean to slow
Not
it
to be
up.
delayed by consideration
Oh,
of
sure.
another peer reviewer. We'd be very interested to see what that scope would be. In my personal experience, not that I know it all, but I would find it inconceivable that a traffic engineer would opine on what you've just put on the table, but maybe there's someone else that can do that, and we'll have to look at it. But we'd really like to get going on this piece, and that would be super.
All
I
right,
think
now,
that's fair. Yeah.
we will continue to press forward on,
Take that other piece under advisement and study. And think about it and research it.
well, you might want to, but you might want to just send a follow-up email to the same four and say, are you aware of this kind of analysis of connecting a traffic study to either water quality or air quality?
Can do that very easily.
All right, and then I don't know that it exists, but it's
We'll find out.
it's an
Yeah,
appropriate
we'll
question
find
to
out.
ask.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. That's a good question. Thank you.
So we're about 4 weeks away from the next meeting, and the question would be if we can get this firm on board within the next week or so, whether they can produce a product that we can be ready to talk to at the next meeting and have a substantive session. So anything we can do to
At the-
move those responses along would be great.
Okay. I thought that was a little aggressive. If you meant by the next meeting, will we have something in hand, a report to discuss? That's,
From the companies, from one of the peer reviewers.
And I think he's referring to the November night meeting, not the Saturday night, Saturday meeting.
The November, you have a meeting on November 12th.
Right.
yes, but
That's-
don't you think that's aggressive to select somebody and get them to file a report? I mean, you gave them a lot of information, Steve.
I did.
Yeah, I was just saying, if we can get them on board in the next week, it would be great, it would be hopeful if we could get their comments in before the 12th so that Jim could look at them and we could have a substantive discussion.
It would. I agree with that. I
Yes.
just think that's.
And I don't know
agree,
what,
But I agree that it would be nice to have it.
yes, and I don't know what the consultants are saying in their responses that, this is our availability, this is when we could turn around a report for you.
Yeah, we didn't ask them to discuss availability and timetable and turnaround
No, but
time.
but the scope said appearance at one meeting,
Exactly. at
within
one
whatever
meeting.
their cost proposal was.
And I did suggest that they have everything in by yesterday. Actually, I suggested it.
Mm-hmm.
That
So
was a
if-
suggestion by email.
Right.
Actually, Stephen, Mr. Chessia's response, he said that he estimates it would take 4 weeks to complete. Just
That
what
was
he's.
his earlier
That's
response.
his earlier.
Oh, I see.
there's an expanded scope, or expanded
Yeah, you
proposal.
should have gotten a copy of that. Did you? Yeah, the expanded scope.
But I don't think that would change. I would hope that he could do it within
Right.
that same timeframe. The scope's a little bigger, but it's not different.
Yeah, it's
It's
not,
more
it's
detailed.
not substantially different, no.
Okay.
Great, so if we can keep in touch over the next week or two and
I
and
have
get
your
that
email
nailed
now.
down.
Yes.
That'd be super.
That'd be
Thank you
good.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Sure,
All right.
thank you. Okay, who's next? 166. Oh, how about that? Finally. Thank you for staying.
My special magic. Huh, this thing. I have my own
Please get
marker.
some
So
caffeine
we are,
before you-
166 Granite Avenue is next on the list, and here you are. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josh Speicher. I'm an attorney with Lawson Whiteson. I have Brandon Faniff here with me, who's a wetland scientist working with us. I will try to be brief, as I know it's very late, and we thank you for your patience.
Thank you for yours.
Anytime. This is a project that unfortunately has dragged out a little bit, and I will take responsibility for the reasons for that. But we have been in contact with Mr. Ivis, who's been very helpful to boil it down to its nature. This is a single-family residence on Granite Ave, right by the President's Golf Course. The backyard kind of runs right up against to some BVW. Our client took title to the property and found a large pile of debris on the property. The previous owner placed it there, and now our client is dealing with it. I'll let Brandon go into more detail on that, but it's asphalt, brick, and concrete. We have had that material characterized. It does contain low levels of lead, slightly above the minimum threshold for reporting, but below the hazardous waste thresholds. And that was the only exceedance that we detected. And so we do have a licensed site professional who is available and stands ready, once we have your blessing, to properly remove that pile. I'm told it should be fairly simple and fairly quick to remove it. We are here asking for permission. There is, in addition, another area, which is denoted on the map as Area A, and I'm talking about it second, but it is Area A. Beyond the driveway, it's something of a parking area now. We have had that area, at Mr. Ivis's suggestion, characterized as well. There were no exceedances for lead or any other substances that we tested for in that area. Mr. Ivis was concerned about when that was placed there. We're not sure. It was not done while we own the property, but we do stand, in any event, prepared to remove it. That should be fairly simple as well. Because of its proximity to the wetlands, however, we do need to seek permission to do that. Again, it should be the same equipment, the same machinery that would be utilized to remove that area. It's a very shallow area of fill, and that's really it. So I'll defer to Brandon on any specifics if the commission needs them, but ultimately I think it is a fairly simple project.
Can you go back to, the owner took title after the dumping?
Yes.
To the left of the, as you're looking at it, I think that's
So
area,
it's,
area
yeah,
B.
I agree. I mean,
Area B?
it's Area B. It's what I talked about first, but it is Area B. It is to the left. If you're standing on Granite Avenue looking at the
Right.
property, it's to the right on the screen there. Just for a little bit of background, our client is an immigrant to this country. He's a Vietnamese gentleman. He owns and operates a small cafe in an office building in the Seaport. He is not very well versed in matters of land use and home ownership. He took title to this property through a foreclosure deed from another gentleman that he knew and was acquainted with, but did not, I would say, do maybe enough due diligence on all the things that he should have. That pile of debris, we believe, was placed there as part of some project that was going on in the basement of the home. This was all before our client took ownership of the property, which was in, I believe, February.
Wait a minute, bricks and blacktop were in the basement of the house?
He thinks it came from the basement. We're not sure exactly where. I understand that the asphalt probably wouldn't have come from the basement, but in any event, it was something that was there when he took the house. He didn't think it was, he didn't think to ask questions about it or do any further investigation. And then after this issue was raised, he has had real trouble tracking down the former owner, and he doesn't really know. And so we haven't been able to find out exactly the nature of where that came from or what was going on.
When did he buy the house?
There was a foreclosure deed. I think it was recorded in February of this year.
Can you help me out on this? I should know this, but I don't. If it's a reportable level of lead, but it's not hazardous material, what are the manifest requirements of removal of that? I mean, the licensed site disposal?
We have a licensed site professional who will make sure all the proper procedures are followed. I believe it's fairly simple. They have to have proper controls put in place with tarps laid underneath and above the material, and then disposal to a proper site. I don't know what site in particular this will go to, but our LSP is fairly experienced in this area, and I'm sure has access to multiple places, and then a bill of lading or a soil disposal letter per the MCP.
Oh, all right, and do you know the LSP?
Yes, I sure do.
Okay, and who is it?
Blanked on his name?
It's Brian Klingler with Conoco Engineers and Scientists.
Conoco, yes. We've worked together before.
I'm sorry, it's Ryan?
Brian.
Brian.
And then the last name is Klingler. It's Klingler.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
And we did meet on site back sometime in the spring.
I believe that was in May.
Thank
And
you.
I wasn't present, but a colleague of mine was, and met
Yes,
with Mr.
George was there.
Yes, and as well as the LSP.
Right.
So remember when we had Phil at Cunningham Park? We were trying to figure out, how do you determine what the original grade was? I think on the left-hand side of the house, it's easy. But on the right-hand side, where the driveway goes down, how do you figure out where the
Oh, I think
Grade
there's
is.
an original O level, O horizon there. There should be an organic horizon, right?
Well, here's the thing, is Brandon Faniff, I was at the site in May, I think the day after you had that meeting, because I couldn't make it.
Right.
And I know that it looks like there's an area of processed gravel immediately behind the house, but is it really much bigger than that? Because what I saw was a driveway that ended, and I saw a lot of lawn.
Right.
Was there a second dumping? Or is it the lawn area that you think is fill material?
No. What I'm saying is below, he's asking, how do you identify the fill material? And there's
Oh, that-
lawn below it.
Yeah, there's lawn below it, exactly.
that's what I was saying.
There's an A horizon,
A horizon, sorry.
right, yeah.
So right at the end of the driveway, that's where the dumping took place? Because I'm really not aware of it on the right side. I see it every morning on the left side of the house.
The left side.
Oh, if you're looking at it from
Brandon,
It's just
Let's
referencing
go
how
Area
north
B.
and south or east
how
and
the map
west.
is,
No.
John.
What's that?
He was just referencing how the map is. It is on the left-hand side as you're facing the house.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I see it every day.
but the map is in a different position, so that's why he said right.
Oh, okay, all right.
I'm sorry, I'm just a little confused. Are we talking about area A or B?
Well, area B, I recognize easily. What my question was, when you get to area A at the bottom of the driveway, because the
Right.
driveway does go down, that's.
Is-
so it's a
Under
lower.
that, there's probably gravel.
All right,
Gravel
but,
and or lawn.
but what's the fill there? I mean, is it obvious fill?
Oh,
or-
yes, absolutely.
It's fairly easy to see with the
It's-
naked
it's-
eye.
it's-
and-
It's crushed gravel of some sort.
Right, it's what we call processed gravel. In the notice of intent package, if you go towards the rear, there's a series of photographs that you'll see a USGS map, an aerial photograph, a couple of those. Let's see, if you keep on going behind that, there's a series of site pictures. look like this, 2 per page.
I don't have that.
So I think Brandon's referring to this picture here. To the left, there's a car with the trunk open.
Right.
Yeah, I've got extra copies of the ESS laboratory, but I actually
Same.
don't have.
I do too.
Same here.
What?
Those were added recently. I think the original package included this. I'm
Oh,
happy
that
to.
was in your package.
Oh, that's the attachment today?
The original.
That's right.
Oh.
package.
Oh, okay.
And I'm happy
Previous
to,
meeting.
I don't have extra copies, but I'm happy to start
Yeah, you
with
can-
this.
Oh, yeah, that'd be
Would
great.
you mind?
I remember now.
Yeah, we have to
Discussing
submit
the
9 of
bottom
them.
picture, I think you can see there's a car there with the trunk open, and it's difficult a little bit, but you can see where the lawn ends. There's a lighter coloration there. It's
Okay.
it's quite distinct from the lawn.
Yes, it's very obvious.
And closest to the house.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, yeah, it's
Closest to
very
the house.
obvious, and I fully expect there
All
to
right,
be
good.
either
Thanks.
gravel or lawn directly underneath it, and that area B is not very thick.
Right.
I'd say it's 6 inches or less thick.
I would agree. Exactly.
Is right.
Yeah, it was unpermitted fill.
Right, I would recommend the use of a machine without
It's concrete, it's a mess.
on the bucket.
We'll put that in the order.
I'm sure we can make that happen.
Yeah. Thank you, that's a very good suggestion. Yep.
Well, this is actually notice of intent, so is there any other part, because I don't have it in front of me, that's my problem. So other than removing the fill, what's going on with the house? Because we had originally been told there was somebody was flipping the house and they were doing construction, and then the construction stopped, and then all of a sudden this fill appeared. So in the notice of intent, are you looking for any other, because any work in the house, it looks like your jurisdiction.
Almost the
was-
entirety of the property is within Buckstone, I understand.
Right, and we're not looking for any further permissions at this point. Frankly, our client's not sure he can afford anything at this point. He's going to handle this and then see where he is, and he knows now, obviously, because of the geography and the proximity of the wetlands, that he would need further permissions, but at this point, we're not requesting
Okay.
anything else in the
Is
notice.
anyone living at the
Thank you.
house?
No.
It's empty, okay.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think we should, get started with the removal.
Good.
But I'm at a loss because I actually don't have it in front of me. Steve, can you, what is the proposed conduct that's requested?
I'm happy to let him
Sure.
keep this if you like.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you.
You can have my copy as well. I have digital copies. I can make more, which if you'd like another one. Not a problem.
Yeah, all you're doing is looking to remove the fill.
Well, yeah, come in complete, we want to come in complete compliance with this, and we want to go through the correct channels.
You basically just want to take the big pile of debris there and get rid of it.
Right.
That's what we're looking to do.
Pretty simple.
Yeah, reseed the lawn, and make sure it's stable, and make it look like nothing ever happened.
Looks good to me.
Yeah, it's an innocuous project. I can give that back to you.
I'm embarrassed because I really did read all the stuff this month, and my eyes were glazing over looking at all those lead findings,
I know.
all the heavy metal
Those
testing.
are tough as well.
Yes.
But,
All right, Steve, and do you see anything else that we should be concerned with? Other than the removal, one of the problems is that, it's not a problem, but it's an issue because our boilerplate conditions are that you can't store equipment within our buffer zone, or the resource area, obviously. And if you've got heavy equipment or some kind of hydraulic equipment in there to remove the fill, we just need it out of there at night, so there's no overnight storage.
Right.
I would, this looks like a one-day, maybe even a half-day job. This is a very small job. You probably won't be able to get a large dump truck in there because of the turn. You might have to take a, small, like, landscaping truck with a dump body,
Yeah.
is what I'm expecting.
1 ton.
Yeah, well, yeah,
ton
exactly.
dump.
So I'm guessing this is gonna be, I don't know, what do you think, a half dozen loads?
Something like that.
Yeah, we're looking at like a half day to a full day, depending on how far they have to drive to the dump-off spot.
Right.
Okay.
So I think this is a job that can get done in one day.
And we have discussed that with Brian at Conoco, and he's on the same page as well. He thinks this is half day to maybe a full day, given the limited area and the simplicity of it, frankly.
Right, I think there may be some landfills that will accept 200 parts per million lead without any problem as well. That's my impression.
And only the area B actually has those exceedances. The area A is not even,
Right.
can be handled even more easily,
Right.
Okay,
for lack of a better term.
that sounds good. Any abutters or members of the public that have a question or wish to make a comment? Hearing none, is there a consensus that we should issue the order of conditions to get this thing cleaned up? Our enforcement order is still outstanding, so that hasn't been resolved, but this is the first step in getting it resolved.
Right.
So is there a motion to issue the order of conditions?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a second? Any discussion? All in favor? Good. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if I may ask, does it make sense to schedule something, or should we just correspond? And then,
We can just correspond.
Okay.
That's easy enough.
perfect.
Okay, how's that?
Thank you very much.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Next is number 9, request for certificate of compliance, 374 Brook Road.
Linguistic barriers, cultural barriers. Fair enough. What's the
Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening, Jim Burke, DeSalle Sala here representing Northland Residential Development. Sitting to my left is Sean Skihill.
Yep.
And looking for a certificate of compliance for 374 Brook Road. We did the design plan back in 2017, I want to say. And order of conditions was issued. It's located, it was an old house that needed to go. And we proposed a plan, and you guys issued an order of conditions back then. An amended order of conditions was issued with that referenced a landscape plan that had some other revisions to it that changed the shape of the deck, put some AC units in there and the like. I visited the site, it looks good. Utilities are in and as built, it's sent to the engineering department for record. So it's, we think it's in substantial compliance with the project, the approved project, and we're looking for a certificate of compliance for both orders of condition.
And we have in our record here that it's your opinion that the project was completed in substantial compliance with the issued order of conditions.
Correct.
All right, and that's dated September 26, 2019. Steve, did you have a chance to look at this, particularly with reference to the landscaping?
Yes, it's all in,
Okay.
as shown on the plan.
All right. Any questions?
My only question is, how long will the wall last? But that's
I think
not
that-
subject of this notice of intent.
Right.
Right. Not long, I think. But we've discussed that
Yes, before.
ad nauseum, so. All right. You've seen it? You attested to its being built in conformance with the plans?
Yes, sir.
Anything else? Consensus to issue the certificate of compliance?
So moved.
Second? Discussion? Up? Any abutters or members of the public like to be heard? Seeing none? All in favor? Good. Perfect, done.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You didn't? 374?
Okay, will do. A week and a half.
Really? Oh, that was really interesting. That was the one that was falling down. It was pretty bad. A friend of mine grew up there. He was an addict. And it fell into rack and ruin. He was a good guy as a young man.
We done?
Nope, one more.
This one here?
Okay, last one on the agenda is 531 Elliott Street.
Correct.
Steve asked me to give him a minute.
Okay.
I was down in the brook there at the cleanup a couple of weeks ago, and what wall were you talking about?
Right, it's, if you're facing towards Russellwood, so your back is to the
Middle school.
high school, middle school,
Yeah.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I know I'm dating myself. You're looking away from Lincoln
Yeah.
Street. It's the wall immediately to the right. You know which house it is?
I
It's the
think
one on the
so,
left
where
of the
house
brook.
disappeared.
Yes.
Because it was,
Falling down.
yeah.
And it was raised and this was rebuilt. So it's just to the left of the brook.
Yes.
It abuts the brook. The wall closest to the house, but next to Brook Road. It's right on that corner, right where the abutment is. So I guess it's the walled portion of the brook that
Yes.
meets the bridge abutment.
Yeah, and now.
It's
you
bowed
can-
out terribly.
You can squeeze between a new fence that was built there and a chain link fence along the brook, and thereby go into the interior or along the side edge of the lot.
Right.
And then kind of crawl down into
Yes.
the brook.
Yes.
You are correct.
Yeah, and that's really the only way to access the brook in that area, because if you go across Brook Road, there are chain link fences, and so it's interesting that there are two fences there when there doesn't need to be more than one, I think. And if the old chain link fence came out, it would be a more user-friendly brook. But we were able to get through, including a 11-year-old girl who did it without any difficulty.
All right, so we're at 531 Elliott Street.
Steve, this is the plan and some photos, if you want to.
I have it.
Oh,
I
okay.
have the plan here.
Okay.
I just want to, let's
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
if this is appropriate, okay? Hang on a second, let me just find it.
My name is
This is number 10.
Tom Palmer. I'm a wetlands consulting representing Lucian and Tia McPherson at 531 Elliott Street, asking for a certificate of compliance for the work completed pursuant to your enforcement order. I guess that,
And
yeah,
there's an order of conditions on it as well.
there is. That's something I didn't have in my file. We do have a DEP number.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever issued a certificate of compliance with a planting plan. But
Well-
rather, the certificate of compliance has to go with order
Engineering.
conditions on the notice of intent, which is separate and distinct from the enforcement order. This is, you're just basically certifying the planting plan. Is that
Well,
correct?
I submitted a notice of intent.
Yes.
And it was in response to the enforcement order.
Correct.
And the notice of intent had conditions proposed by Steve in the summer, or it was June of 1918. And then we had a public hearing here, and that list of conditions was modified slightly. And that list of conditions were the ones I am considering in my statement that the work is substantially complete. That was, the project, as you know, was to remove a lot of unpermitted fill in jurisdiction and restore the area by plantings. So my planning plan does not show the new grades, but I saw myself that the new grades are compliance with the conditions.
There weren't any proposed new grades, were there?
No, there were
It
not
was-
exactly, it was about the slope.
Bring it back
Yeah.
to original
On the bank.
grade.
Right.
And
It-
then a slope.
Yeah, so all the fill was to be removed within the drip line of the trees, all the new fill. And the area outside the drip line, in the center of the lawn area, that was not to have any slope greater than 3-to-1. Those were the two conditions regarding the fill, except that the fill within the drip line had to be removed by hand
at the lower edge to prevent further damage to the surrounding trees. But the fill did kill some trees. It killed the trees. Closer to the cliff area, several trees there were killed and were removed.
That is, I'm not sure, they certainly died. I'm not sure
Yes.
if the fill killed them or not.
Those are the ones shown as
Well,
red
the
dots.
first time we saw it, I said to the homeowner, those trees are gonna die. And we were out there so many times,
Right.
and he violated our order at every step of the way. Tom was before you were involved, but
right.
we
Yes.
told him to keep the top over the pile of fill and not do anything, so he took the top off and he put the fill right out to the back, and that's when he covered the trees.
Right.
Those trees were healthy when I saw them, before they died. So, Tom, I salute you for actually helping this fellow out.
Yeah.
But it says here, the attached as-built planting plan.
If you look behind you, I gave you copies, right? You can look at the plan, right? The one on screen is hard to read because it's turned 90 degrees.
Oh,
I've got it in my hand.
Yes, yeah, I just was,
same thing.
I'm trying to look at it.
Right. No, I'm not giving you a hard time.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that what I would be looking for is to have some kind of attestation, and it should be from a professional engineer, that's what we've always required, that the elevation, and we didn't have a topo map there, but we said, bring it back to grade. I agree with your recitation, back to the drip line anyway, and then we had to be careful of the slope where the stream is. But we need some kind of attestation that that was done.
Well, there never was an engineer involved in this at any point.
Right.
I think Steve, the proponents were very grateful for Steve for coming out so often in recent months just to check on things and try to make sure they were going right. I think Steve can tell you himself, I think, whether the work is in compliance with the conditions. I think it was, simply by my own observations. I'm not an engineer, I'm a wetlands consultant. If we were to hire an engineer, it would be hard for him to get those original grades that you would want to compare with the current grades.
That was my earlier point.
Yeah.
And because we're only dealing with the yard itself, which is unusual. Usually we're dealing with the building. So in this case, I'm not sure why an engineer would be necessary
Or useful,
or useful, yeah.
right. I would agree.
Well, how about saying that the work was done in substantial compliance with the order of conditions? And that, I know that sounds like form over substance, but we have always, without exception, required that. And I appreciate what you're doing, Tom, but it says here, that you're approving the as-built planting plan. So we need more about that the elevation was restored in compliance with the order of conditions. Maybe it's just a question of rewording this. I'm not hung up on professional engineer versus, wetlands consulting.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, you could do that.
Yeah, I wasn't really aware that there was an order of conditions.
That's obvious.
Yes.
Looking at the form.
Yes.
That you found.
Right. At any rate, in my letter, I said that the work described in the notice of intent, approved at the meeting, blah, 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 is substantially complete. So I stated that in my cover letter. But I could expand that to say that the work, blah, 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 is substantially complete, rather than simply.
Well, actually, the language, Tom, is completed in substantial compliance with the order of conditions. That's the language.
All right.
That we look for, just to be consistent. Completed in substantial compliance with the order of conditions.
And Steve, I wonder if you could get me a copy of the order that I...
I'd be happy to, sure. Write that one down.
So I could rewrite my request to take the form you're suggesting after I review the order. Would that be,
That would be fine. Do you need this tonight, or can you submit
That's
it?
needed tonight, because we haven't wrapped up the enforcement order. Talk about non-compliance. Wow, this is like a serial violator.
I can't explain it. You know, he seems to me a reasonable guy, but...
Whenever he comes in here, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I was astounded.
And my
Some of the
interactions were
actions.
very reasonable as well. Every single interaction I had with him.
I don't think he understood at all about your jurisdiction to begin with. And it took him a long time to get the message, I think.
It did.
Yeah.
So I don't think he does need it tonight. And we still have to address the whole issue of the violations. So we need a history of the violations, because it goes back, and, I mean, they were documented by photographs. We were out there, the site walks that we were there, and said, don't do anything, stop. And then he went ahead and he did it, and then he did it again. Because we told him, don't do anything more, and he did it again.
Is this call for fine?
What's that?
Is this,
Oh, absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, this was like repeated. So we actually had to, you know, and I think Hans was probably the most persuasive with him to get you. And said, look, you need some help, and you need to go out and
he did a
see
very good job.
Tom Palmer.
Well, I think if you go to see it now, you will be impressed with the investment he made in the planting, because he put in a lot of trees.
And shrubs.
Yes, many, many. The
Well, do
whole
we have a tree count?
perimeter.
Because the trees that he killed, they've got to be replaced.
Yes, there was a red maple, a hop hornbeam, not quite dead yet, and the Norway maple. Last time I was there in August, they had died. He hadn't cut them. Steve said, "Are they cut?" I spoke to Lucian a week ago. He said they have all been cut. All the trees have been going to be removed. He did put in with the grass irrigation, which I wasn't aware he would plan to do, but it's in there, and the mix is bluegrass and fescue, and he didn't really understand the distinction. I told him, if you water it a lot, it's going to be bluegrass. If you water it less, it will be fescue.
True.
Yes.
All true.
But as far as impacts to the resource areas, I think he has stabilized it so that there shouldn't be more movement of material.
Right.
There shouldn't be, that's
Yeah.
correct.
He chose his words very well.
I recommend you look at it if you have questions. It's worth seeing, I think.
Well, I'd like to see, do you have a tree count for us in terms of the number of trees that
I
either
think he
died
added
and
a
can't cut?
dozen. If I look at, I marked them on the, including the European beech, and you know, that could be an enormous tree one day. You know, those are very large trees. That's way in the back.
You're talking about what he planted?
Yes.
Okay, and so, and how many?
I count, let's see, 2 pears, 4 apples, that's 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 trees I count. Kwanzaa cherry in the middle, that was a large cherry. That was 4-inch. That was a big one. So I count 10 trees. I would say he killed 3 or 4. There was a major limb that fell off a tree on the cliff edge of the wooded perimeter, and that revealed that the limb that broke off was completely rotted, and that was outside the graded area, but he had to deal with that as well because the enormous limb fell on the lawn. I think he planned to cut that one as well.
The limb,
Yeah.
the tree.
That's right. And,
The tree.
No, the limb, not the tree.
yeah, I believe that's the case.
The tree may be owned by his neighbor.
It's on the, what you would call the east side or the cliff side of the backyard. The area outside the chain link fence going toward the river was probably once a mill. And it's very bouldery now and overgrown, and he has never been through to the river, even though it's only 100 feet. And if you ever want to see that bank, the way to see it is go on the new Greenway in Mattapan and leave the trail and go off in the woods of the riverbank, and you can look across the bank towards Unquity House. Unquity House appears to be looming over the river, but his lot just looks like woods. You can't see his house.
Okay. Do we want to see it?
Yeah.
I would like to-
We've got to
yeah.
figure out the tree count and what the enforcement order should look like, you know, at the end.
A good thing for Saturday the 26th?
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Let's say 10 o'clock, that other one will take a good hour
Oh,
anyway.
yes.
Anyway. So 10 o'clock?
Yes.
That may take more than.
It may take more, so. Would you like to inform Mr.?
Yeah, I'll tell Lucian.
And in the meantime, can you just kind of reconstruct your letter?
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Ron.
I think I understand.
They will be able to vote and sign at that time if they're happy with what they
Okay.
say. How's that?
That sounds good.
On the 26th, which is only 11 days.
Yes, well, for a certificate, there's not usually a big rush, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Night, too.
Good night, Jerry. Thank you. Yes, good night.
You will see, he did something I haven't seen in Milton before. You know, he has a large deck
Yes.
overlooking the backyard.
High.
And, yeah, on the second floor of the house overlooks the deck. And on the wall of the second floor, he placed an outdoor TV.
Oh, my God.
Yes,
Really?
yes. And it's a very large screen. It looks like it might be 15 by 20 feet.
Drive-in theater?
Yes, he said, for football season, for when I invite everybody to watch football.
On his new lawn.
They'll probably sit on the deck, I think. But,
That's fine. Good for him.
yes.
I'm excited to see it.
I might like to go.
They'll all be there.
All right, thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Maybe we'll
Good
see
to see
you
you,
as well.
Tom.
Yeah, I will probably.
And I just want to reinforce what John said earlier. Thank you for taking this on.
Yes.
It's satisfying to me to try to get it to where you want it to be.
Well said.
All right, so that takes us to additional business?
Two brief items.
Yes.
Number one, for the TV audience, Harlan Street and Unquity Street. That intersection is coming from a 45-degree angle to a 90-degree angle where you have a stop sign. It will be much safer for everyone involved soon. And number two, our favorite project at 131 Elliott, Zero Central, has begun. They have started excavating for the foundation and footings
Oh, good.
for that project. That's all for tonight.
That's good.
Also, for next, could you put on the agenda, Steve? How could those lights at Town Farm?
Town Farm,
I know, I always call it that.
is that wood blot?
Wood lot, yes.
Lights?
Yes, they're supposed to be facing down.
Oh, you're talking the street
Oh,
The
lighting.
street lights.
I was
instead of
thinking
that,
traffic
the-
lighting, sorry.
Neighbors are complaining That
Really?
needs to,
Yeah.
yeah, because they're supposed to face down.
We did talk about that.
Yeah,
Not only is it supposed to
Conservation area.
face down, but
That's
also on the sides
yes.
to have a shield as well.
So if you could put that on for November, you can want to talk about it.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we can't get a resolution before then, I will talk to Mike Rosati
Good, thank you.
in the meantime. How's that?
Excellent, thanks, Steve.
Sure.
So we done?
Motion. Yes, please.
Only if you want to be.
So motion to adjourn?
So-
All in favor? Good, all right, we're done. Thanks, thanks all.
Arthur, you made the motion?